call me the motherfucking manager, and I'm here today with two beautiful black people. First, starting off with the hostess with the mostest, we got Supernova. Say hello.
Hey, what it do? What it do, people?
And we also got another one, the black man with the log, 507.
What's good? What's good?
Was good. Was good. And today, people, we're going to talk about one of the most controversial topics that has hit the surface in recent times right now. Today's start date is June 2nd. It is 11:02 p.m. at this time of recording. And we're going to be talking about the recent time abortion laws. Now, everyone has had their own opinions about it. We're just going to break it down. First, starting off with the laws that already have passed it but haven't taken effect yet. And we're going to give our own opinions about the laws. So, do we have anything to say before we start?
No, I'm straight. I think I'm good to go. You good, Supernova?
I'm ready to go.
Alright. So, abortion. Crazy topic. People have had all 2, 3, 4 cents in it. Everyone's been saying different opinions. It's so argumentative. It's like going to a bar, talking about religion or politics. Pretty much is about politics at this point, but you get the point. But, man, so many abortion laws have been controversial right now. Some states have outright banned it, and some states are just cutting off the due date where you can even have abortions. But let's start out with Louisiana first, reading off from this article before we give out opinions about how we feel about this. Actually, we could probably just go along with each different state. So I'm going to start out with, what's this, Louisiana? Alright. So, Louisiana, Governor John Bel Edwards passed this on May 30th. For this abortion law, it prohibits abortion when a fetal heartbeat is detected. Usually occurs around 6 weeks before many women can even comprehend if they're pregnant at this point or not, which is very much is very much a problem in my opinion. But let's read along. The law doesn't contain exceptions for pregnancies that result from rape or incest, but it does include an exception to prevent a woman's death or a serious risk of substantial and irreversible impairment of a major bodily function, i.e., like, pretty much cutting out the baby is what comes to mind when I think about this. I'm pretty sure there's a lot more things that could be going on. Or if the pregnancy is found to be medically futile, which I would assume that means the death of the woman. But they already said that, but it was kind of unclear. So, knowing for Louisiana, how you guys feel about this so far? 507 Supernova?
507, you can go ahead. I'll let you go first on that.
Yeah.
6 weeks is a pretty interesting time frame that they would say that, because it says it prohibits abortion when the fetal heartbeat is detected, which usually occurs around 6 weeks, and I feel like that's kind of disputed at all. I thought I definitely heard earlier regarding that, and that might be different for the states, but because 6 weeks sounds like a decent amount of time, but as a man who's never been with someone who has been pregnant before, or even had a scare nonetheless or anything like that, I think that's something a little more that a woman should decide, and that we should have a woman's opinion on regarding that, just because I've heard that, and feel free to comment, interject on this at any point in time, Nova, that it can take up to like 2 to 4 weeks to even notice. So that's starting to push that line.
It
Yeah,
could
so
be
okay. Sorry. Yeah, it's definitely pushing the boundaries, because Women's menstrual cycle is just so fragile. Like, even the people that have the most steadiest, menstrual cycles and whatnot, that, like, appears every month, is appearing around the same time every month. It's a 28-day cycle. And lots of things can interrupt that. Whether you have a lot of stress in your life, you can skip a period. Like, it's not uncommon to do that. So giving a woman a time frame just as small as, you miss your first period and you might possibly miss your second one, but you don't know, because you have to rush out and, like, think about these things. Well, you know what if I'm not stressed? I might be pregnant, this and the third. I don't think that's fair, because nobody automatically jumps to that, like, that idea, first of all, like, oh, I might be pregnant. It's more of a, I didn't have my period right now. Am I really stressed right now? Am I eating correctly? Am I taking care of myself? It stems within, am I doing what I need to do for myself question first, before it becomes a question about another life.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So, I feel that this law is definitely kind of pushing it's just really right up close with that. It creates a sense of, like, fear around it. It's I can't really get to do what I need. I can't really process what I feel about this situation, because within a certain time frame, my choices will be gone, and I will have those choices stripped
Exactly.
from me.
Mm-hmm. I
But
feel
my opinion,
okay.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Right.
Sorry.
I feel that basically hopping off of what you said, these abortion laws are definitely not catering to an emotional side effect on the women themselves. It's more of like logic. And when you're in a relationship, or however this baby came about, there's not really too much logic to be put around, the baby making process. You gotta, it's a lot more deeper than just, well, that's a life, so therefore if there's a heartbeat, then it shouldn't die. And that's
Mhm.
kind of how I feel about it too. Like it's emotions. Even for dads too sometimes, but especially for women, you gotta, for me, you gotta really think about how they would feel about this. It's relatively new, and then as soon as they find out, then some women are shocked, and it's like, well, I can't even abort this baby now, whatever circumstance it was, which goes into the topic that, like, in a lot of these different states that we're about to read, some of these women don't really have choices, and that's very crucial.
Mm. No, it's extremely good point. That's an extremely good point. And it does say that before women know that they're pregnant. So it's for me, it's just kind of interesting because I'm a very logical person. That you would get to that point where it's like, oh yeah, let's choose a specific date and time that's kind of like vague and kind of ambiguous to when a heartbeat may or may not be detected. Like you're just setting yourself up for failure. You're supposed to make laws to be able to protect the people, essentially. And I understand that these laws are being made with the intention of protecting those who can't protect themselves. But in doing that, are you infringing on another party's rights, which is, the main issue here?
Definitely agree with that part.
All right, anything more before we head on to the next state?
I think that's it. I think we can go ahead and head into. Looks like next up is Missouri.
Missouri. You want to read that out first?
All right, yeah, I got you on that one. So, man, that was a crazy one. So, law prohibits abortions at 8 weeks of pregnancy. So that is what's that? 2 weeks longer? Yeah, 2 weeks longer. Um, than what our previous state is at. Law doesn't contain exceptions for rape or incest. but it includes an exception for medical emergencies. The law states that doctors who perform an abortion after the 8-week cutoff could face 5 to 15 years in prison. It also contains a clause that requires written notification of a parent or guardian for an abortion to be performed on a minor. So I think there's a lot to unpack there compared to the to the previous day. So Full Buster, if you want to start on that one, if you want to, I don't know if there's one thing that sticks out to you primarily that you want to discuss. Because I feel like we can talk about the majority of that all day.
Oh yeah. Well, first thing that catches my mind is, before we get to the more crucial part, because I think it's lesser but still just as severe, imprisonment for doctors that are taking in these abortions. I mean, human beings are very interesting, and sometimes we don't like to tell the truth a lot, believe it or not, in this day and age. So, and I mean, and you already see where I'm going with this, right? I mean, if a doctor is not told the truth on how far along a woman is in the pregnancy, I mean, say what you want, you can have science studies that can show how far along a woman is, but it may or may not be 100% accurate. And in that case, the woman has to full on tell you, or I'm not too sure about this. I will say that I am ignorant because I have not once personally have been to an abortion clinic. But if things go out as I think that they're going to go out, in that a woman will explain how far along, and Supernova, you can definitely interject at any time if I'm wrong. They can tell how far along. Say that again?
So, I think you're definitely on the right path with that. I haven't, a solely abortion clinic, and maybe they have more intense procedures to, tell how far along you are. But from my experience, I've been to Planned Parenthood before. Most people have. And at least there, they usually ask you what's going on with your body and, how long do you think you are along and whatnot. I don't know exactly the exact science behind it of how they determine how far along you are. And I don't think they ever, explained it to be an exact science either. So, I
So
think it's more of a guesstimate.
okay. So I mean, that's even worse. If the doctor guesses wrong, then he can face ample amount of time in prison because, you know, he guessed how wrong a woman is far along in their pregnancy. 5 to 15 years.
I would imagine that there is some sort of waiver process regarding that if they were to proceed with the operation. I think basically what the law is saying, if the doctor were to perform the operation, which essentially would be illegally outside of his normal medical practice, and knowing that that the pregnancy is only X amount of weeks, or past the X amount of weeks required to be able to abort that baby, then that's where that becomes legal, and he can face prison time if he's ever reported. That's typically, for me personally saying, that's typically nothing you'd ever see at the abortion clinic on record, unless the abortion clinic is just messing up. But I mean, 5 to 15 years, that's that's crazy. I don't want to get off track immediately off of that, but just 5 to 15 years for an illegal abortion is crazy compared to what some rapists get in America. And those topics seem kind of unrelated, but I just want to draw those parallels to be able to kind of comment on the American justice system and how I think women are being treated extremely unfairly in this situation. That's definitely something to pay attention to, especially state by state, because Missouri's pretty bad here with all the stuff that they've got in their abortion law here, especially since there's not an exception for rape or incest. I feel like that probably goes without saying, but I'm pretty sure we're all in agreement that that's just a no-no to have that excluded
Yeah,
from the bill.
Oh, definitely. I thought
definitely.
that was I thought that was one of the craziest things I heard about this law is the fact that, in the case of somebody is like proven to have a case where they could have been raped or, it could have been incest and whatnot. And then also like following up on that, having those clauses and then also saying that a minor has to have you know, parental consent for that. So if it's a case of rape and incest, then that same parent that just, did these things to you can also tell you, no, you're gonna have this baby.
I didn't even
Like,
think
That is,
about
I
that.
didn't even think about that. I
I didn't
thank
even
you for
think
bringing
about
that
that.
up.
She
so that in itself is mind blowing that people could just like, bowl over the fact that that is a possibility. It's, crazier things have happened in this world and there's plenty of proof to prove that. But like, you know, just to be, so incoherent when placing a law is just really ridiculous. Like it just comes down to the fact of, how could you pass a law like this and not think of things like that?
And
that's complete. That's yeah.
I
I'm
mean, it
speechless, honestly.
goes it goes right back to what I said like at the last state with Louisiana. It's like when these laws were made, it was a lot more logic put into it and not so much emotion. And that's where people are getting the problems from. It's not from like, well, technically that makes sense. It's like, well, of course, technically it makes sense. You got a heartbeat, you must be alive, right? But there's a lot more emotional things going on, especially to the new point that you brought up that it could be very much well a family member that did it and tell you, well, you're not going to abort this baby. So you're going to have it, you're 13, 14, 15 and pregnant, and you can't abort the baby. So now you're scarred with life. You're going to have to take care of a kid or whatever happens. Or they can very much well get kicked out. And so now they're on their own. And
What
anything can happen in a messed up household for that. But go ahead, 507.
I think I want to say is in not to defend that point because I think what Bree said is an extremely good point and something that obviously wasn't thought about. I think if you have something like that written, that's pretty black and white. But I think the goal of that initially was to deter minors who are engaged, are sexually active, to just going by themselves, being under the age of 18 and being able to just to freely get an abortion. If you think about that situation, if that was your child and you knew your child was having sex and had an abortion, like you would be like, you would go up to the institution and be like, well, what the hell? Why didn't you like stop this? This person, is obviously a minor, not legally allowed to make all of their decisions. But and we have to weigh that every situation is a little bit different. And it does vary by a case by case basis, and I think we have to take into account what Bree said more than what I said. I think there are more instances of um, sexual assault from a family member that could lead to a pregnancy actually happening than minors in America being sexually active and just trying to get an abortion without their parents knowing. I don't have the information to back that up, but I would be willing to bet actual money that the first situation that I mentioned there is actually more of a problem than kids just randomly getting abortions while they're under the age of 18.
And to kind of piggyback off of that, there's been multiple studies which I can or cannot confirm in my own personal researching, but I mean, when it's said multiple times over and over again that most rapes occur from someone that you know, then making a law that kind of diminishes that point is really crucial, and it makes people think, well, who wrote this law? Who signed the paper? And that's where you get to all the topics about, which we're getting to later, all the topics about like there's just a bunch of white men in politics, which I mean, it sort of is true, but I mean, that's where they're gonna get most of the heat from. You know, like laws like this, they just don't make sense. Even at a logical state, it doesn't make sense. Very much so an emotional state. Like it just doesn't make sense to a lot of people. But
Right.
oh boy, the next one. Supernova, you want to take this? And before you take this, let's ask the tavern what we having to drink tonight, because I'm taking a big swig of of Mike's Heart. Actually, let me get my Jack, because I'm gonna need to take a big swig on that one. What's the tavern having tonight?
I got over here, as you hear the clinking, I'm gonna go ahead and make myself a Jack and Coke here, and maybe probably go ahead and make it a double.
Oh
since
boy!
we're going to the state of Alabama.
Oh yeah, Supernova. What you having?
So, I am over here rocking a Red's Blueberry Ale. I definitely love this brand a lot. Definitely frequent their drinks, but essentially anything apple, if you give it to me in liquor form, I'm gonna drink it.
I second that. I love me some Crown.
Appreciate it.
Love me some Crown. Trust me. Give me a bottle of Crown and I'll be a happy man for the rest of the night. Sit still. I'll do what you want me to do. Go to sleep. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, Crown Royale makes you feel royal when you sip on that. That and
Right.
and Hennessy at some nights. But I'm gonna leave it at that. While Evan gets his drink here, is it alright if we move on to
I'm ready. I'm good to go.
Sweet Home Alabama here with these laws?
Sweet home Alabama.
Sweet Home Alabama. Oh boy.
Okay, what does the law say?
What does the law say?
Should I read it word by word, or should I?
You gotta read it word by word.
Word by word.
This
This
is
one-
it's wild.
this
It's
is wild.
every time I read it.
This is wild. Alright.
Okay. It is the most stringent abortion ban in the country to date. The law will make performing an abortion at any stage of a pregnancy a felony, punishable by 10 to 99 years in prison. It contains an exception for when the pregnancy poses a serious health risk to the woman, but it does not make exceptions for rape or incest. It's supposed to go into effect in 6 months, but with legal
And-
challenges from American Civil Liberties Union and Planned Parenthood mean it could be years before it's enforced, experts have said. Oh man.
I think I'll go first here, just
Yeah.
to kind of comment on this.
Take the floor.
Boy.
Just to kind of comment on this from an initial standpoint. Look, we're not laughing because we think this is funny. We're laughing just because like this is just the most ludicrous.
This is
of
reality
them all.
right now in the
Like,
US.
yeah, the fact that this is this isn't like clown show. Like this is stuff that you think comes on at like SNL, you know, at night. This is like our legit life right now that we're living, and it's just crazy. A pregnancy, a felony punishable by 10 to 99 years or life in prison. They actually had the nerve. Somebody wrote that out. A law writer actually took the time to write that out to say 10 to 99 years or life in prison, just in case you make it past those 99 years and you aborted that baby that one time. What in all God's name do we need to be putting anybody who has any type of abortion in prison for forever, essentially? Like,
Not to mention, sorry to cut you off, but not to mention, to add the cherry to this BS cake, the governor, Kay Ivey, if I pronounce her name right, yes, this is a woman that signed this law in Alabama. A woman. Just,
The
just,
audacity.
just let that sink in, guys. A woman signed. She read through this. She signed this. Put her name with the date at the top right corner of the paper, and she put it into office. And it's going to be in effect in what? Less than a year?
Less than a year if they get that if they truly get off the ground. There's a lot of combatants regarding it, but
Oh yeah.
6 months. But I mean,
Where do we even start with this? Is my thing.
It's honestly, that's the better question. Where do you even start? Because the fact that a woman did it, like, go ahead, Supernova. I'm lost.
Yeah.
At that point, you might as well just, you just forfeit your right to the sisterhood. You have given up all rights to the sisterhood. You have literally seen your women in arms and look the other way. There's no other way to say it. There's no other way to look at it. You have literally forfeited your womanhood by alienating yourself, because nobody else agrees with this law. You have alienated yourself from the rest of women, because I don't care what you say. And there is an exception to an exception to an exception to anything. Nobody's gonna 100% agree that, abortion isn't necessary in some cases. The fact that you have it in like 100%, no denial, no reasoning, no abortion, you're going to jail. Excuse me?
Like,
did you read that, or did you you were just sipping your morning coffee and you were just chilling? You're like, I gotta sign this paperwork. I'm gonna just sign it. I didn't even read it.
it's
And
like
take it away. Take it away.
it's like I'm really trying to find the words looking through, because when I looked at this beforehand, like right before this podcast started, I'm just thinking this state right here, and I mean, take it as a meme right now, because Sweet Home Alabama, whatever you have to say about this is literally a joke. Okay, this, like, when people say that their rights are actually like in non-existent with this is insane. Okay, beforehand, one of the states, I think it was Missouri, like, the doctors faced maximum 15 years, for
Right.
but minimum is 10 years for, and if you don't have an excuse that literally states that you're dying, you're going to jail. You're going to jail
For life.
for
life.
any point of the pregnancy. You could be a day in and realize that you're pregnant. Not realistic, but I mean, like, a week in.
No time.
No time.
Timing on it.
No timing at all. You're going to prison. You're going to prison. And I don't think it specifically says for doctors, but I mean, if 99 years, because one oopsie. 99 years maximum, because damn it, the condom broke in the 0.001% chance of the condom breaking, because damn it, my boyfriend or my husband didn't buy the right size this time. If I get an abortion, women are going to jail. Women, not the guys in the relationship that may or may not go. I'm not sure about the doctors, but if the doctors go, that's a big issue too. But not as big as the women. Okay.
Very good point. Very good.
Important
point you just made.
Unwanted baby.
Extremely good point.
Rape, incest, combination. It doesn't matter in Alabama. You're going to have that baby, or you're going to spend the rest of your life in jail. No, nothing. You got to be on the brink of death to escape that.
Wow.
That's,
death door. That door.
like,
Death. You gotta be like.
Like, like,
knocking on that bitch.
like Reaper Man with the scythe waiting outside that door. Like, he's
Bro.
right there, homie. No, you're going to jail now. For
That's which is wild. That's
That's
so wild.
For what though? In a lot of these cases, there's women who didn't even want to have sex with said person. I'm not even gonna call it partner because it's not a partner. Okay, I shouldn't even have to explain it. That's dumb. Okay, and excuse me for whatever disrespecting the U.S. system. I don't give a shit at this point. But this. Alabama, you're getting man a slap of the wrist.
How you gonna tell somebody they get raped and then they have to keep the baby?
And they gonna have to keep it. Like, man, it's just a baby, you know. It's not something that you wanted. You know, you didn't even want the sex, but you know, what's a baby gonna harm you? You know, unless you're dying. That's
like,
dumb.
Because never mind the 18 years you have to, you know, whatever your financial situation be, whatever your job position may be, you have to struggle for the next 18 years legally to take care of a child that you didn't want in the first place.
And on top of that, you not guaranteed child support in U.S.
You're not guaranteed child
You're not
support.
guaranteed. So
especially,
you're gonna have to
especially not from a rapist, and then even then a rapist could come back and claim rights to that child.
Right. File taxes on them and everything. Now that's
and they walk free.
Ain't that crazy?
And they walk free. But meanwhile, if they're convicted of said action and it's proven, then they get the slap on the wrist and what? 2 weeks jail? A year? Okay, compare 1 year for raping a woman to 10 years for aborting the baby. That's for a baby that they don't want, that was never even consensual in the first place. That is ridiculous. That I can't. I can't. I say what you want about any other state that we're about to head into. Alabama, no contest, worst state.
Throw it away.
No contest,
I'm sorry.
worst state.
I'm sorry.
And if you disagree, you are welcome to comment. But Alabama, worst state. Sorry, nope.
Absolutely not. And the funny thing is, we shouldn't be surprised because it's Alabama at the end of the day. But even in 2019, Alabama is still surprising me with how ass backwards it is, and it's just hilarious. It's hilarious at this point. I mean, it's just terrible for the women. This is an L for the entire female population of the United States. And on behalf of men, if I can speak for some of the men out there, we apologize. I mean, you know, a female governor signed this into law, you know. But
this is the wildest one. I mean, it don't get much wilder than this. I mean, but
that's true. That's true.
I have one more thing to say about Alabama.
All right, Nova.
Just my last thing.
Well, just as I thought, trash.
Couldn't have said it better. Man, I finished my jack off of Alabama. Like,
woo, woo.
I finished it.
Another.
Nah, wait, let me get another sip of lemonade. All right. Damn, I might pass out, but
it's crazy.
Is it time for fireball shots? We can do those.
I've been chugging. I'm finished. I'm really finished with the jack. I'll send y'all a picture afterwards, but
I just want to pour one out for the homies of Alabama.
No, literally pour one out for the women and out. Forget the guys. Guys will be all right. They walk away scot free. But bro, women in Alabama, we gotta give it to y'all. Please, we gotta. Man, my heart goes out to all y'all. I'm not even joking on this. This is serious. I don't like
honestly,
this.
Honestly, that's so true. Honestly, that's what, because you shouldn't have to deal with this. I mean, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit, but some of y'all in that state elected that governor, and some of
Right.
y'all knew what that governor was going to do, and some of y'all were female.
Right.
So I
Right.
just want to throw that out there, and this is one of those situations where, you know, the people you put in power, like, this is the result, this is the consequences. Like, elections go by all the time, and people be like, oh, not really much changed, right? And this is the type of stuff people are talking about. So
Now,
Mhm.
you gotta pay attention.
I'm not gonna exclude all the people. I'm gonna say people at this point who voted for Ivy, because I mean we're humans, okay? We're gonna lie at some point. We have lied, all right? If
Hmm.
you're gonna lie at some point.
With
I don't know what,
politics, it really
but
comes down to, voting for the less evil because it's politics, man. Their literal job is to lie to us, and
I
we either gotta
mean,
pick, you know,
I get that to an extent, but
I get it to an
look,
extent.
I think,
for abortions, for especially since that's been a hot topic for years, that's something that is extremely black and white on your campaign. You know, when you're running, like, if people ever want to look up what you're about, like, your stance on abortion is going to be clearly stated, and there's no
you're
way
right.
that you're telling me that this person's stance, because I don't know them at all, but you can't tell me that this governor's stance was not clearly stated, that if I become governor, I'm essentially going to put myself into a position to where I can outlaw abortion. There's no way that you can't tell me that that was not her campaign site.
and
So
God forbid that happens to her. I mean, I don't know how old she is. I don't know what her situation is, but God forbid that stuff happens to her and she has to go through it in her own state, no less.
No, what would be the icing on the cake is somebody close to her, like her daughter, her cousin, her
Oh yeah.
niece, somebody close to her that, she has to take responsibility for that. Like, I did this. I put this law in act and, my family member is struggling and suffering because I said that this needed to be something that happened.
mhm.
I sat there and looked at abortion and say, okay, this is not okay unless you're going to die. So men can rape you freely, whatever. Get
I
minimum
mean, this,
charge, one year, slap on the wrist. Like I said, slap on the wrist. 1 year, they ain't gonna kill you,
men would
unless
be, boys would be boys.
yeah, boys will be
It's
boys.
literally boys.
That's basically Alabama, and I can't even argue with that. I cannot. No matter what stance you say, it's very clear that if you accept this law, then I I don't think a lot of people are gonna like you. I
For good reason.
for good reason too. I mean,
For good reason.
I mean, I'ma just pray, like I'm seriously praying for Ivy and her family that none of the women have to go through this if they live in the same state, which I'm going to assume that they do. I would just hope that nothing happens to her family and anyone who's in Alabama,
I
because
mean, you
that's just rough.
you gotta wonder what the mindset is behind this. Like, it's literally, so I feel like people like this haven't gone through much hardship in their life. Because there's just no way as a woman that you don't have enough compassion to understand that there are really bad things that happen in the world. And they don't choose, you don't get to choose whether they happen to you or not. So to take away somebody's right to, fight back a little bit from the bad things that happen to them, taking away their basic rights to say, you know what, this guy raped me, but I don't have to have his child.
You're taking that right.
It's just, it's mind blowing. Like, I feel like a child could understand that. So why is this grown adult who's the governor of a whole state? How does she not understand this? How could she
I
put something like this to pass?
I feel like men her age can understand it, so why can't she?
It's crazy because as you two have been talking about this in the background, I've been trying to figure out, what is the punishment um for rape state by state, and I got to point out two things here. So it's crazy that the punishment for rape is no less than 10 years in prison, and no more than life or 99 years. So again, that thing where we're putting we're we're giving a harsher punishment to women with abortion compared to a person who can rape another person, which is absolutely wild. And I honestly got to shout out North Carolina here. They might have potentially the most strict punishment for rape, which is amazing. Minimum
Good.
sentence of 25 years.
Hell
Uh,
yeah.
def- Defendant is given life without parole if victim is under 12, which, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
what's the
Good
difference
job, North
between
Carolina.
in this day and
Good
age,
job.
thinking about women, what's different between getting raped and actually dying? Your life is ruined. Except you're not in death, you're not around to live through it. And when you're raped, what I seen women experience and whoever experienced rape in that regard, it's like your life feels
It's a
diminished. You don't
decreased quality
feel
of life.
yeah, you don't feel the same before the accident. You feel disgusted. You feel like not worthy with yourself from what I've been told. It's like I can't explain it because I've never happened to me. But it's bad. It's
It
horrible.
also
It's
changes every interaction you have with another person, be it person like female, male, or whatever. There are certain triggers now that you wouldn't react to in a normal basis. That now there's smaller things. There's little tendencies now where you can't even live your life normally without like going through it and be like, oh, is this person gonna hurt me? Is that person gonna hurt me? Can I trust anybody? Can I walk down the street in the middle of the night to get to my car to get something out of it without being attacked? You start isolating yourself from everybody. I've never had this experience happen to me. I can only imagine. And I mean, being a woman, I feel like I can get, not a perfect sense. Of course not. I could never get a perfect sense because I've never dealt with it. But I feel like I can at least imagine enough how much anxiety alone that would be. You know?
and to add
And
on
I
top
mean,
of that, like the fact that women have to carry the child, it's just a whole different story in of itself. If you live in Alabama,
oh yeah, 9 months. 9 months. 9 months is a long, long time. Nine
listen,
months
nine
is
months and
almost, it's
18
almost a year.
years.
9 months
Let's be
is
real.
exactly.
9 months
Let's
and
be
9 months
real.
and
18 years.
9
18
months and
years.
18 years. Let's be real. Because
Imagine looking at somebody who looks a little bit like you, but also looks a little bit like the same person who caused
him.
you so much pain.
Right.
Looking at that person, just looking at your child, something that came from you, and reliving that pain every time you see that child.
With
For the
no
next
help, no help
18
from the
years.
government
No
that's
help.
forcing you
No
to
help,
do this.
no child support,
No
and
help.
if you
No
don't
child
have a
support.
sustainable job, then no food for the table for you, and if you're really bad, then no food for the child that you're going to be forced to raise at this point. Crazy.
And I want to because some people will argue, well, if you don't have an abortion, you can still give the child up, and somebody else can raise it. Let's stop pretending like that is such a a great option. Let's stop that there. Let's stop. Because, you look back at these kids who bounce around from foster care to foster care, who are in and out of, adoptions agencies, and, they have to have checkups and visits with DSS and whatnot, and all these random people not knowing who to trust, not knowing why their parents gave them up, not knowing, what's in store for them, and always wondering, why was I even brought in this world if nobody will love me? Let's not forget that, because everybody seems to think, well, just have the kid and, life will be great. Because that's not how it happens. It's not how it works.
That doesn't even happen in consensual sex.
Exactly.
Damn.
Never mind somebody who's a rape victim or something happened and they didn't want this child.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely right. It's absolutely right in that regard.
But
I have a good friend. Who is adopted. She is Hawaiian and she's from Hawaii, but she doesn't know anything about herself. The hospital that she was born in was burned down. She literally cries to me about not knowing who she is, not having an identity with self. She grew up and she had a loving home with a mother and a father and whatnot, but there's just a loss. There's just a disconnect by not being able to, know her story, know the whole picture. And you can still
Mhm.
grow up in a healthy environment and still be, distraught and disrupted by that. She's 30 something years old. And this is something that she still feels strongly about. She feels that strongly about that it's something to make her physically cry. I mean, can we not just, stand up and realize, like, hey, these people have to live after this.
they have to go through life trying to be the same way before it happened. And human beings, we live by experience. So if our experiences are messed up, we're in turn going to be messed up. If we're brought up by humbleness, then we in turn will grow up and be humble and be respectful and be grateful for what we have. But if we are abused, used in our early years of life, we will in turn have a fear for what we were abused by, what we were used by years, months, days, hours beforehand. And that's what most people, if not everyone who are against the abortion laws, are trying to have the government understand, that we have to live after this. We have to live with this. We have to carry this burden with us. Not necessarily the child itself, but how the child is brought about. Because I'm pretty sure the kid, I mean, a lot of these women who are forced to carry the kid, they're probably going to it could go down either two ways. They're going to be either distant from the kid because of how they're brought up, or they're going to love them and show them that what happened to bring them up is wrong. But there's not a lot of times that it happens. The government needs to understand that women will sit with this until the day they die and go to wherever place that they're going to in the afterlife. They have to. They have to think about it. Every interaction, from waking up to going to bed, every single day is going to be different after this one mishap happens.
Mhm.
And they don't give that consideration for it. But
Mhm.
going on past that point, are we done with the are we done with Alabama for right now, or is there any final
Yeah,
thoughts?
I think we are. I think we're all good on Bama.
Yeah, because Alabama, I think that was like the that was the meat after all we get through all the laws. But I'm gonna go ahead with Georgia. Let me get my glasses here real quick. Excuse me. Okay, so Georgia law was passed by Governor, Brian Kemp, Republican, for Georgia. The law says it prohibits abortion when a fetal heartbeat is detected. The law makes exceptions in the cases of rape and incest, as long as the woman has filed the police report first. It also makes exceptions to save the life of the woman or when a fetus is deemed unviable because of serious medical reasons. Now, what I say about this for in Georgia specifically is that it may not be the best, but I think three of us can agree on that Georgia, from what I read, is a step forward from the other. I mean, it's an entire leap from Alabama, but it's step forward towards Louisiana and Missouri. Okay, because
It's very true.
I mean, it's the amount of leniency. It's still kind of strict, and I don't exactly agree with it. I mean, it's like you're still getting on to the point of heartbeat. Heartbeat is, it's usually found within 6 weeks, and 6 weeks, like we've all said before, I'm pretty sure that 6 weeks is not enough to determine whether or not you're pregnant. Plain and simple.
Right.
So, like, logically speaking, like, it's not enough. You need, like, a guaranteed point of time. But the government needs to know that fine line to actually make where the law actually somewhat makes sense. Because people just don't agree with, like, having a law for abortion at all at this point in time. But 507, you want to continue on to some point that you have, Supernova? Anyone?
I had a point here because this is one where I think Georgia's about to get a big reverse here coming soon, and this is primarily a financial thing. Status of the law, Planned Parenthood, and other groups that support abortion rights have said that they will take legal action. Meanwhile, major entertainment companies, including Netflix and Disney, have said that they will rethink their investment in the state if the law takes effect. It's dead. In my opinion, the law is dead in the water at this point because of the millions, if not billions of dollars that go into the entertainment industry that they would bring to this state. Look, I don't care who you are, I don't care what state you are, if Disney is in your state and says that they are leaving your state, whatever you did to piss them off, you gotta fix it ASAP. And as big as that is, like that hurts local economies, because we're talking about millions of dollars that they pour into the filming and the production of a movie while they're there, and that's $100 million that's going into the entire economy of that state. So if you're removing that, you cripple your economy, because there's no way that a good chunk of your economy isn't completely based on when Disney shows up to film movies. There's no way that you can tell me that for Guardians of the Galaxy 2, $100 million while they were there filming that movie in Georgia. There's no way that you can't tell me that you won't feel the effects of that if Disney isn't filming any more Marvel movies in your state. They've got to turn that around. So I think between that and Netflix, with Netflix still being the number one streaming-based service, they'll turn that around. Money talks in this situation, and I don't think Georgia has much of a choice, and that's specifically going to the money and less of the women's rights, which shouldn't be the case, but in this case with the women here in the United States, we got to take the wins wherever we can get them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if the fiscal part of that will turn that around, let's take that route.
Supernova, do you have anything to speak on the female side standpoint with this law in particular for Georgia?
Yeah. So definitely, I definitely agree with 507, where I feel like this is gonna get thrown out very soon because of the circumstances. But also, like one minor detail I'd like to focus on is definitely the fact of it says as long as a woman has filed a police report first, for like instance of rape.
Oh yeah.
That is wild. That is completely crazy.
Would agree. Yeah.
For the simple fact of people don't, that's just not always the first thing in mind. Some people have such a long and hard process just identifying what happened to them, and to file a police report for rape, you have to go to the hospital and get swabbed so they can find traces of suspect DNA in your system. And that means you have to go right after it happened.
Yeah.
There's no, let me take a shower first and process what the hell just happened to me. Because I can't even, mentally bring myself to say what happened. I don't know how to put it in words. I don't even want to put it in words. I don't want to think about what just happened. I want to be the furthest I can be from the place that I am right now. And I definitely don't want to be in a hospital with doctors probing around an area that was sacred to me that had been disrupted. And further, disgrace what has already happened to me. To have to prove my case, to have to prove that something happened to me. I just think that whole thing right there is ludicrous. Because it's factual. People have not gone and filed police reports. Sometimes you have cases where, things happen and then people, this is not every case of course, but this is a very small case, but for example, there is something that we in the black community especially do, and it's where if something bad happens to you, you keep it to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Also known as the no snitching rule. But
yeah, so
basically, yeah.
A lot of times, things will happen, and this is like this goes back to where he said earlier in the podcast. He said that most rape, people that get raped, most of the time it's by somebody they know. A lot of times, a lot of cases in black specifically, because I'm talking about black people, specifically us, our families are really hush-hush about that because that's disgraceful. That's not something nobody wants to have known. There are people that go and they're like, hey, this happened to me, and then their family member was like, oh, well, you can't tell anybody about that. You can't go file a police report because then everybody will know our business. That is something real that happens, and it still happens today. It's disgusting. Yes, it is totally terrible. I'm not condoning this, but it just further throws out the idea that you have to, you have to prove your case. You have to go and file a police report. Something that you have to do right after it happens. You have to go to paperwork. You don't have time to process what just happened to you, and that's not fair. Some people are strong enough to do that, but you have to respect that some people don't care to relive it, don't want to be put in a situation, and they shouldn't have to deal with the consequences of what happened to them, which possibly could be having a baby, especially if they're not ready financially, physically, if their age is of not, if they're not of age and they're and whatnot. Like there's just so many possibilities with that just don't line up.
Exactly.
I would be interested to see what the fine print is on the police report. If it, with it here, it doesn't state that there is a specified amount of time. But I would like to see what the fine print is regarding that, because I agree with you. I agree with you, Supernova, but I do understand the logic regarding it, because working in the field that I work in, if I ask somebody to provide a police report for a certain type of loss, that would be expected. But obviously that's a completely different situation. For that being auto insurance. But in this case of rape, that's something that I think is obviously beneficial to the woman to be able to make that report. But at the same time, yeah, there is a huge emotional aspect that has to be considered, that not everybody can do that immediately after the fact, whether if that's minutes, hours after, or even days after, like, because you don't understand that you are having to tell this story, and that is the largest hurdle for anyone who has been sexually assaulted, to bring that forward, to be able to tell that story to another person, and especially to a police officer in a situation where that's not a personal relationship that you have with whoever that reporting officer is, whether if you go down
Right.
there or call them. So that's an extremely hard thing to do. Ultimately, like, I would say that women should do that 100%, just because obviously we want to um, protect women as much as possible in those situations, and try to catch that person as soon as possible, because even though it is beyond anything that I can imagine, and hurts to do that in that moment, like, the sooner the better that we can get to that person and make sure that that's the guy that spends 25 years in jail, or spends life in jail, and doesn't get away with a slap on the wrist, or hurts another person like that. But I do understand the challenges with that, and that's something that I'll always be forever on the fence regarding that. Like, I get the need for a police report, but then at the exact same time, like, I don't, because it's hard to write something into law that like reflects the emotional spectrum of what's going on in situations on a case by case basis.
I will say something that's gonna add a little bit more fact to what I said, so it's not just all on the emotional side. But it's such a time sensitive thing. So my fact for that is the male sperm can survive in a female's vaginal cavity for up to 5 to 7 days. Anything past that means that, if this person decided that within a week they just could not take themselves to go get checked, to file that police report, maybe it took them 2 weeks. Now that DNA is already gone, and it's a case of he said, she said. And if this person is a first time offender, then how do you prove the case? There's just it by making it a qualifier, making it, well, you can't have an abortion because we can't prove that this guy raped you because we don't have enough evidence. Then it becomes well, I guess I have to have this baby DNA tested after I've had it live inside me for 9 months, and then prove my case that this guy raped me.
Right.
And that and
Um,
that and I think that's important too.
um,
Just that aspect.
so the aspect of reporting what has happened to you, it's so hard to explain how I feel about this. because every point that has been said by you and 507 is true. 100%. Can't even deny it. But it's just that it's so hard for women to get this appealed in some sort of way because technically in the law, if it's not reported, then no one really knows what's happening with your situation. And it sucks, okay? Because women don't want to speak up about it. And I understand it fully. Okay? It's not easy at all. It's hard. It's very hard. It's difficult. It seems almost impossible to do at any given point of time, depending on the person that you are. But if you don't explain what happened, then the good people who understand, like, okay, well, it's really hard for you to explain, will never know. It's like you go into a basis where it's like, well, I want this because I don't really want to explain my reason. And then you get to some assholes who are just like, well, like, if you're not going to explain your reasoning, then I'm not going to give you it. They won't take the extra mile to pull you aside and not put it on record or anything, or however the process goes for abortions. They won't go the extra mile for you. Not in a lot of cases. Maybe there's a few people, some hundred, some thousand people that might, but 1,000 is like just a very small percentage of 7 billion in the world. You know what I mean? And there's a very limited amount in the US alone anyway. Like, you're not gonna always get the easy road of, damn it, well, I just gotta not say anything and hopefully they'll understand, because some people will just be dicks to women. Some people will say, well, you don't say anything, so whatever. You're not about to say it in front of me, then you're not getting this procedure. And you're stuck with the baby, and good luck and have a good life. Try to get it illegally, and then in Alabama's case, you'll get like 10 years minimum. Not to, I mean, but reality. Okay, I don't mean it in a joking way, even though it might sound funny at first. But when you fully understand it, reality. That's all I'm trying to say on this. Reality. I'm not gonna force women ever to explain. Let me rephrase that. I'm not going to force anyone. I don't care if you're a woman, a man, a dog, an alien from outer space. Okay? If you don't want to explain a simple situation, I can't force you. It doesn't matter what it is. But especially going to a topic where it's so sensitive, it's so easy to understand, like, alright, well, maybe they don't want to talk about it. I'm not going to force you to say what happened, but at the same time, you have to look at the professionals, because this is, at the same time, their job at risk in some states. A lot of different states.
Right.
It sucks. It sucks on both sides. It sucks for the women who have to go to the abortion clinic, and it sucks for the professionals that have to accept as women, men and women who are working in that field, to deal with these kind of situations, with these laws that are somewhat BS to their profession, is my standpoint. It sucks. It sucks mostly on the women that have to deal with this, but it also sucks with the professionals that have to take care of the women.
For the professionals, it definitely makes it harder to have that connection with your patient. It makes it very hard to take what they say, at least at face value. I definitely, my run-in with doctors being a black female has been, for the most part, pretty negative, because doctors are used to brushing off what women say. I mean, Some people might have that experience, some people might not. But for the majority of what I've seen from the people I know, from the people I've talked to online, for the most part, we get brushed off for the things we say and we feel to begin with. So, for, to have this type of situation happen where you get raped and you still, you try to go and, talk to the authorities, you go to the hospital first and try to talk to your doctor. Well, you know, when they approach you with sarcastic tones and condescension and, did this really happen to you, or did you just, had a couple drinks and didn't remember saying yes?
Right.
Because that's something very real too. That still happens. You know, like you said, you have some professionals that are not kind, and they really they have this law backing them to not be as compassionate as they possibly could be to their patient.
Right. Uh, Before the next point goes out, I'm going to step out for a second. It won't be long, maybe just about a minute, but I'm going to be right back onto the mic. But you guys continue talking.
Yeah, I mean, to some point in time, like this this whole entire thing kind of comes down to morality and freedom of choice. Well, and that's what the rights and the laws comes down to. At the end of the day, but the actual people signing this into power, I guess I always kind of wonder, for each governor that has signed this into power, what's been your motivation behind it? Whether if it's for Democrats, typically it's more of a liberal view of we're protecting the people that can't protect themselves. For the right, for the Republicans, it's typically been more of a standpoint of trying to get back to more traditional ways, and religion does play a bit of a part in it as well.
Definitely.
But just trying to understand like the motivations behind it, and as we move into the next state, which is which hurts me the most. I mean, Bama's obviously the worst, but the next state definitely hurts me the most, because that is the one that I occupy some land in, to be extremely vague about it. But I mean, this whole thing for me, like when I think about this, and people have asked like my stances on abortion, especially just to throw this out there for the podcast, that I would consider myself consider myself a Christian. They ask where I stand, and I'm like, you know what? For me not to have a full stance 100% is probably bad in some sense, but I was like, I kind of use my male privilege in a sense, and glad in the fact that I really don't have to think about something like this, which sounds horrible if you think about that on paper, but what I mean by that is like that is not an internal fear that I have to think about every single day, compared to like me being black and being stopped by the police is a fear I have to think about every single day. But just
I can piggyback the flip side of that being which is a Christian woman, a black Christian woman, and I definitely probably don't have the exact same views on this as what would be stated in the Bible, but at the same time, my human nature and what I take from in the Bible is that everything is supposed to be about love. And
I mean, to my knowledge, there's nothing in Scripture that says anything about abortions specifically. I'm pretty sure in English text all the way to the original Hebrew and Greek text that the word abortion never shows up. I'm pretty sure there's not a word for that existed back then, since the procedure is more recent than than not. So I can't really say that that's there. So I'm like, so that's why, you know, some of these politicians consider that as like, you know, when it gets up to the heartbeat, because, you know, that's the whole point, the heartbeat bill, that they consider that essentially taking an innocent life, and they essentially see that as murder. Is basically what they're trying to say, to kind of like a different extent. And you know, the Bible doesn't necessarily have guidelines regarding that. And my viewpoint has always been, you know, I do see the taking of a life as a sin, but the weight of all sins are equal, and you deal with that once you meet God at the end, from what I personally believe.
I think I could get behind that too.
I also want to piggyback from that because I personally have not come across or heard anything about abortion in the Bible, but what I have heard is about lust and things that go back to, you know, things such as rape. There's a literal scripture that says that if you look at a woman, like say you're a man and you look at a woman and you lust after that woman, the woman is not to do anything about herself. You are to pluck your own eyes out so that you may not see this woman and not sin.
Ooh, the ninth commandment: thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Yes. Or somewhat similar to it anyway.
So the fact that we have so much focus on what a woman does with her body instead of what, you know, what people do to other people is absurdity. And the fact that they're, you know, believing that they're leaning so much in the Bible, but clearly not reading the right scriptures is just a funny little tidbit, you know? I'm pretty sure I could probably sit down and find the actual verse for you. Now, asking me to find a verse on what it says exactly on abortion and whatnot, I can't give that for you.
I don't think that the Bible has ever really touched on abortion, mainly because thinking
I'm
about
fact checking that, but continue.
Yeah,
because I said the same thing, but I'm fact checking that.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong at any point, but I'm pretty sure, based on where the Bible is taking point in time and comparing it to like other life events that's happened, I don't think that they had the technology for something like abortion. So I don't think that they would be able to speak on that, mainly because they would not know what it essentially is at that point.
Right, and I mean, you're probably on the right track with that. Also, I want to back up some history. I mean, you have people back in time that, you know, respected women's rights so much that back when the Trojans were a thing, they had women that could own their own land. They had the right to divorce their husbands if they deemed them not worthy and whatnot. And then you would also have women that died in childbirth being buried next to heroes, because dying in childbirth was as much as glory as like winning on the battlefield or dying on the battlefield. It's just that, you know, where did we stop seeing, you know, women as human beings rights to their own bodies, and the fact that we want to protect somebody who hasn't even been birthed into this world, who has not contributed anything to this world yet, and then just, you know, whatever happens to the actual live human being that's in the here and now, just forget them. Forget about what they are contributing right now into life and the earth and the economy and whatnot. Forget that. You're not changing anything about their life at all.
Definitely get behind that.
I'm coming up on a gold mine here of information, at least scripturally, but I think which is hilarious that I didn't look in this book. I think Exodus actually kind of provides a pretty solid answer to about scripture with abortion here. Give me just a few more moments.
To process?
Just to read into. I want to see some different versions of it. Because I typically read the NIV, but kind of want to see the King James version of it, and
Yeah, I typically
just
read the King James myself. So
Yeah, I definitely lean towards more King James for sure.
it just what my family preferred. So that's just that's the version I usually go with. But if anything,
Well,
I
I
would
can tell
know
you.
some. Sorry.
Sorry. Well, I can tell you why I lean more towards King James version because the NIV is from my understanding is basically the the further translated version of the King James version. And the King
mm,
James version is the closest to what they translated from the actual old scripture, the actual like written out or the scrolls of what they found and what they translated from Hebrew and whatnot. That was my understanding, and that's why I read from the King James.
That's exactly why my family reads it. I um I personally only read it because mainly that's what my family has come up to read the version of in the Bible. But I will say that um, I have dabbled into just the Holy Bible. I don't know what version that is. I don't know if that's NIV. But there's so many different versions of the Bible that it's just like too hard to keep up with. I keep with the King James, if anything. So yeah, I at least try. I can't give you like a certain scripture that I remember from it. I'm not too far deep into it, but that's just the version that I'm pretty well aware of, is what I'm saying.
so I won't take too much more time up on this. I don't. Again, I would have to do some deeper research to see if the word abort or abortion is actually ever used. There are some references to it within scripture, so specifically in Exodus, it kind of says if a pregnant woman, if she gives birth prematurely or if she has to. Yeah, and it kind of depends version by version. So I would love to get the original Hebrew on it and be able to say like, what does this actually translate to in English context? But a lot of times in the Bible, basically, it seems like unborn children are seen more as property than actual life, which some people will use to say that that's the instance in which like the heartbeat essentially doesn't matter. It doesn't matter until the child itself is born, which people can argue regarding that. So
Which
in
we'll get
terms
into
of the
later.
right, in terms of the scripture itself, I don't think there's anything there that holds a lot of weight in terms of, if you're a Christian and you say, well, the Bible says this. I don't believe that there's that anywhere specifically. I think there's things that you can interpret to say, well, this is how I feel regarding this. Ultimately, it comes down to consider what you consider that child as, and at what point in time.
Mm.
Hmm. But
But
not to stray too far from it. Is there any final points on the abortion law in Georgia that we want to touch on, or do we want to move on?
I think we can go ahead and move into go ahead and move
507
into the
state.
Buckeye State.
507's own home state, Ohio. I'll read this one unless you guys. I'll read the rest of the ones unless you guys want to interject and uh, read the rest.
Let's see, how many more do we have? We got quite a few.
We
More
got quite a
left.
few. So
I'll go ahead. I'll go ahead and do Ohio since this bum ass.
so
Bill was signed into law on the 11th in April by Mike DeWine. Vote in a state legislature was 56 to 39. So you know, people were voting against it, but it was still pretty unanimous in my opinion. What does the law say? It prohibits abortion when a fetal heartbeat is detected. The law makes no exceptions for pregnancies resulting from rape or incest. Status of the law set to go in effect July 11th. That's next month. That's next month.
Next month.
The ACLU of Ohio and other groups are suing to temporarily block the law for taking effect. So, first things first, I did not vote for this man. I participate in all elections. I definitely did not vote for this crotchety old ass man. Did I know that this was on the ballot for this guy? Absolutely not. I had no idea. I didn't look at what he was really for. He didn't really match up with the ideals that the other guy had. And for me, most of the time, it comes down to your environmental policies. And he really didn't have much going on, so I was like, I'm voting for the other guy. So definitely didn't vote for this guy. So DeWine, you suck. And I'm sure the majority of women in Ohio probably hate you right now. And I don't know when your term is up, but you up out of here real soon. Whenever those elections are coming up, but
oh yeah.
Okay, so
I mean,
sorry, random side note. I literally did a spit take when he said all of this. I can't.
Oh yeah, that was a well-deserved spit take. But
it's crazy.
I mean, Ohio is not really different from the other states that we mentioned so far, so I won't go into it too deeply, but it's just reiterated, you know, heartbeat, 6 weeks, not enough time. What else? No exceptions from rape or incest. I mean, we got on Alabama for a good 20 minutes or so for that, maybe a half an hour at most for their laws. All right, so we're definitely not gonna give up on Ohio. We're just gonna not continue on from it. But if there's anything specifically about Ohio that upsets you, not.
I think it's just the personal factor regarding it. You know, obviously Alabama is the worst offender, but
oh yeah,
the fact that you know that this could affect me on some sort of personal level. You know, if there's somebody that I know that is affected, you know, by this and says, you know, especially with the rape or incest one, I'm just like, the fact that you legally cannot do anything about it, that you will be punished by the federal government for a choice that you make is wild. And yeah, I feel sorry for anyone that has to go through that.
Which I will say for Ohio in general, for this article that we're reading, it does not say anything else about like what is acceptable for abortion. It only states what's not acceptable for Ohio, so we don't exactly know what's acceptable for abortion in Ohio at this point. We only know what's not acceptable. Just to clarify. So
I saw the I kind of got to go to ground zero since I was in the heart of the city and got to see the protest about it, and actually got to see the women on the front line literally the day after it was passed, just downtown protesting, and they're like, this is some old bull. And more power to those women, more power to all the women who are fighting against this. But you know, it's just kind of like, you know, depending on where you live, it's just like, you know, I'm not used to seeing that type of thing, and it's just interesting to see that it's real. You know what I mean? You see it on TV all the time, you see it on the news and the media, but when you're walking down the street just to to go to your job or whatever, go get a sandwich or whatever, and then you look to your left and that protest is going on, and you see that as real, that's when it starts to hit you personally, where you're like, you see, you get into your mid-20s and you're like, man, what is going on in this country, man?
Yeah, man.
Typically it's just a lot of games and it's a lot of BS, but it's like this is crazy. Like, people's lives are being affected on a daily basis, and it's like, how did the government get so far away from actually representing the people that it's supposed to serve and protect?
And I mean, it goes back to what I said earlier on, and I hate repeating myself, but man, reality is all I have to say, man. Reality. This is the now. This is what's happening. This is what's happening next month, and no less. What is this, June 2nd? This is happening in a month and 9 days, roughly. So right after Independence Day, you're not allowed to have an abortion. Like, literally a week after Independence Day, you're not allowed to have an abortion for any reason necessary in Ohio, as we know right now.
I kind of like, there's something like, I don't know, would you call that like irony in the dates or something like that? Like, almost like it's like, oh well, let me just get raped before it goes into effect, like July 11th. I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, what, man? Like, the whole entire situation is crazy. It's hard to think
crazy.
about.
I mean, there's so many words to describe it, but there's not a single word that I can think of besides like disgusting, because to just get the basis on like everything that's happening, it all proceeds from like one or two little things. Like, for me, I'm focusing on like the rape and the incest aspect, which is like, it's so rape is just out the question. But I mean, accidents can happen with incest too, so giving people no choice in that kind of matter is just like, well, why? What if it happened? Like, and then you have to think about like, well, what if it happens to this governor? What if it happens to the governor's family? Their daughters,
right.
They get raped. They're kind of stuck with that law if they live in the same state.
It's interesting that incest is like out there as well, because with incest, typically that's where you get the children with a lot of issues with deformities, as well, due to the genetics. So I'm just like,
Exactly.
you would think that, like, somebody would be thinking about that at the exact same time, but
and yet no one. Well, okay, I won't say no one. Sorry to cut you off, but in my own personal experience, I don't hear incest brought up as much. Now, rape is a very large issue. It will be infinitely larger than incest, but that is not to say that incest does not exist. Okay, I don't agree with incest. I'm sorry if it goes against.
Think anybody does.
No. But that's the thing. There's some people that do agree with like first, second cousins and sisters, and like I will apologize to you if you agree, but I personally do not agree with incest. I don't think it's right. I don't think that like having a deformed baby is okay. I just don't like. There's nothing good from incest, in my opinion.
If you get far enough down the line, sure. Maybe if it's like, okay, this is all by like marriage and not by blood kind of relation, fine. And it really doesn't even matter at that point in time. But if it's like, this is your second cousin, come on.
No.
Come on, like.
No.
And,
Sorry.
And not for incest. I just mean for anyone in a relationship in general, like, in which that, cause if you have a relationship with someone who's considered your family member. That is essentially that is the definition of incest. But I'm just like, if you go down that line,
Like,
and, you know,
if we're going to like stuff like in-laws, like me personally, I will not speak for anyone else, but me personally, in-laws are considered blood to me. So
right,
it's like I'm not going to have relations with my sister. I don't care if they're in-law or not. They're my sister. So no.
which is more socially taboo than it is like genetically wrong, because if you did, because you and that person are not blood related, so if something did happen, it would be okay, but there's the social taboo of it, which is what I'm saying. If that's like farther down the line regarding in that instance, sure, maybe, whatever, you know, do whatever you got to do, I guess. But I mean, if the blood is anywhere connected, no, it's an absolute no.
No, you can be my 10th cousin, and I will still say no.
And that's just sidebar conversation for for that relationship. You know, when we're adding in rape, you know, it's obviously a hell no.
Yeah, no, that's just no question to me. Like, why should anyone think that rape is okay? Is my thing. But it kind of goes into morality, and morality is separate from abortion right now. So maybe reality will be a different topic. But just to give like a simple standpoint, some people really think that rape is okay. Some people really think this process out, like, if they're not going to give it to me, whatever gender that they are, mind you, if they're not going to give it to me, I'm forcing them to give it to me. And you know what I mean by that. And they think, and they sit out, and they plan this through in their sick, disgusting minds that this is okay. No. No matter how you look at rape, it is disgusting, okay? Accidents can happen with incest, alright? 5th, 6th, 7th cousins, you know, you're not really aware, whatever, like how you're related, okay? But then you knowingly track back into the family line, and then it's like, related, we'll think about it and talk about it. However, we can get past this, even though it might not get past anyway, because it's knowingly out there that you guys are related and you have relations. But to continue on after you know you're related and just like still go on with it is no. I after that it's done. If I ever got into a situation, this is me personally, I speak for no one else. If I ever got into that situation personally, and I have not, I'm stopping it immediately. I'm like, I care for you, but I can't care for you in the same way I care for, you know, a potential love interest. Because there's one way to love family, and there's one way to love a significant other. And you can't mix that between the two. You can't love you can probably argue that you can love a significant other like family, but you can't love family like a significant other. There's no
right.
There's no way getting around that with me. I can't sometimes I don't even want to think about it. That's just out there. But to get on to the point of our conversation, do we have any last remaining points on Georgia before we move on to Utah? Because this is getting a little bit long. But Utah is actually interesting. So
Utah is very interesting as I'm reading into it as well. So now go ahead and go on Utah, unless Nova, you had anything.
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. So Utah. Personally, I think it's way much of a bigger step, but I'm going to read into it. What does the law say? It prohibits most abortions after 18 weeks of gestation. It joins a list of other abortions restrictions in the state, such as a 72-hour waiting period and in-person informed consent session, Planned Parenthood of Utah has said. The law makes exceptions for pregnancies resulting from rape, fatal fetal deformity, or serious harm to the mother's health. So, from where we've been reading so far, Utah undoubtedly is the most lenient from this list so far. I mean, let's just go with the obvious at first. 18 weeks before abortion is cut off. I mean, that's like more than double than what we've seen. Okay, that's 4 months. Four and a half months. Alright? 4.5 months to plan out what you have to do. Do you want to keep the baby? Do you not want to keep the baby? What's your job situation? What's our house situation? How are we going to deal with food, water? You know what I mean?
Extremely long time. That's honestly an extremely long. That's halfway through. That's halfway. The baby's halfway to being born.
Right, but is it? But what I want to get into, and Supernova, you're definitely the one person that I want to see if you're objecting to or agreeing with. Is it too long?
I think it's too long. I personally think it's too long.
But hold on, 507. Let's have Supernova first because she hasn't spoke first.
I definitely could see the other side of it, where people could say that's too long, and the baby's halfway born, and this, other, third. But I also just, I feel like there's just so many things that can happen within the span, like the whole span of 9 months. There's so many things that could happen from like the start of this child being developed up until this point.
Right.
Now, I'm definitely not trying to make my point right or anything like this, because at some point I do think that it's a very long time. But also, like, if there's a situation where, somebody has a child and then their living circumstances change and they are just physically incapable of taking care of themselves, let alone the life that is growing inside of them, I feel like that is still it's still within the parameters, still within the rights of that person that's carrying the baby.
Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I would agree. I mean, I'll always agree about medical emergencies. Personally speaking, I think that, if something happens along the lines of that pregnancy where it complicates it and a medical professional says, if you have this baby, your life is at risk, I think that person should have that choice to be able to say, okay, I will or won't have this, baby. Like, I'm willing to put my life on the line to have this child, or, I'm not, and that we're going to abort. I think that person should have that choice. My thing is the timing. 4 months, you're pregnant. And I think even in instances of rape and incest regarding that is, I think 4.5 months is it's 18 weeks. Yeah, 4 months is enough time to decide whether or not you would want to keep that baby. In those instances, typically the answer is immediately no, and you're going to know well before 18 weeks if you're pregnant. So I think that is an ample amount of time. I think it's a little too much because that gets to, like I said, that gets to that halfway point to where that child is alive, well before that time. But I think of all the policies that we've seen thus far, this one is probably, if I had to favorite one, I would say this one is probably my favorite regarding. I think this provides enough protection to the unborn child, because I believe that child should be protected to some extent. But I believe that the choice does rely within that woman as well. But for me, it came down to the timing. We were talking about 6 weeks was absolutely not enough time. There's been some instances where women have had babies completely, their water will break and they'll be like, I didn't even know I was pregnant. I don't know how you get to that situation, but we've had women in those situations before. So I can understand that if you don't know you're pregnant at 6 weeks, at 8 weeks or whatever, but 4 months is a long time. 4 months is a long time. I feel like you had a good amount of time to understand that you were pregnant, to understand that your body's changing, to understand that you are about to bring a new life into this world, and that unless there is a medical complication, that if you pass that time period, you've made your decision essentially.
Okay.
I think that is a reasonable amount of time.
Okay. There's one thing I personally want to ask the Supernova because I can't answer this for myself. And it's something that you brought up right at the very end of your point is that I can't. How is it possible that a woman cannot know after a certain point that they're either pregnant or not? Is there any way to guarantee it after like a certain point? You know what I mean? Like,
No,
no, is what you're saying.
no. Yes, because I don't know if you heard part of the point Evan was making, but there's literally like a whole show on like TLC of I didn't know I was pregnant, and people literally got up to their water breaking and said they did not realize that they were pregnant because
Okay.
because you have certain instances where certain people don't always experience all the effects of pregnancy, and if you're somebody who's like either bigger to begin with, you don't really pay attention to a little bit of weighing. You're just like, oh, I've been eating a lot. I should really just cut back on eating. And if you're not feeling like the morning sickness and whatnot, and if you have weight problems to begin with, that also aids in the fact of you have fluctuating periods because your hormones are out of balance because you have a weight problem. You could also have a thyroid problem that also contributes to the fact that you don't get a constant period. There are people that are thinner, and they just really just don't gain that weight that they have
Yeah.
to really like understand like, hey, there's something growing inside of me, and like you don't like, yes, there is something inside of you, but like the people sometimes legitly do not feel the baby moving around. you know it's an indescribable feeling. And if you're somebody that's never been through it before, especially, like you don't know, you think of all these other things, but you don't really think of that. If constant periods are something that you don't deal with on a normal basis. um I can bring in an instance with my mom and my younger sister. They are completely opposite from me, and they have very, very light flows, and it doesn't show up every month. In fact, people say that females hormones, and we don't bounce off each other and whatnot. But before I came home and I was living with my mom and my sister again, they would go months without having it. And then when I came back and I was living with them, they would have it more often when I was around. So it's just hearsay. Like it's just not possible to definitively say, hey, there's no way that you didn't know that you were pregnant unless the person experienced a significant like gain in weight, and there's something moving around in my stomach, yada yada yada. Like it's got like I feel sick every morning. At that point, it's just blatancy. Like you're just ignoring the fact that you're pregnant. But like I said, some people don't get those symptoms.
Which makes my point a lot easier is that because women are different, we all, humans come in all different shapes and sizes. Let's be real here. We come in as thick, we come in as thick, come in as, in between. All right, laugh about it if you want, but it's true.
Sorry,
No comment.
I was just thinking about thick with two C's, and that's what I said in my
Right,
head.
like there's really some thick, all right, and there's really some skinny. You know what I'm saying? Like people come in different shapes and sizes. There is 7 billion people on this earth. Not every woman is going to go through the same pregnancy cycle as another woman. You may have the baby 8 months in. You may have the baby 10 months in. Premature, overdue, sometimes you might not even, I mean, hell, you might even get the period and you're pregnant.
That
Maybe.
has happened before.
That's and I
happened
mean,
before.
and I mean, you can't tell. You can't just, and that's why I don't like this logs, because it's like, it's not, I get what they're going through. Like, after a certain point, a baby has developed, well, not a baby necessarily, but a fetus has developed so much that they care so much for their lives that it's like, all right, well, if you're this far along, just wait the extra month, maybe 2 months. It's not as bad as the 7 months. Go through with the pregnancy. If you don't want to put her in adoption, again, but that's the logical standpoint. We're not looking at just the logical. We're looking at everything. All right? Every woman is different. Like every human is different. So women, may not come in to know that they have a baby until, like in some instances, like right before the water breaks, or right when the water breaks, whenever. It's like, damn, like, and that's kind of embarrassing too, to figure out at that point that you're pregnant. But that's more of the emotional side. I'll get back to that. But it's like, you can't put a timestamp on this kind of thing. That's what most people are going through with the government. The timestamp doesn't make sense. It doesn't. It doesn't at all. And it sucks, because it's like, there's a bunch of people that will argue, well, this fetus is a human life. So what right do you have to kill this human life? It hasn't grown up. It hasn't lived life. It hasn't, passed away like a normal human life. It's killed early. And that's very much true. But women, they have to go through this. They have to go through different situations. First of all, they have to go through different situations on the top of the globe, that how the baby was made. Was it consensual? Was it from incest? Was it not from incest? Was it rape? Was it not rape? That in and of itself, just creating the damn baby, is so controversial in of itself. It's making people argue like, okay, is these abortion laws really worth it? Not really. In a lot of people's eyes. I personally am neutral. I don't know what to say. But it's so hard to argue. I can't. It's like, when reality kicks in, where it's like, me personally, as a guy, I'm a guy. And going back to what 507 said earlier, I'm so glad I don't have to deal with this. I'm going to say it myself. I'm so glad. And I'm sorry. And I'm genuinely sorry that women who are in certain states, predominantly in the South, because a lot of these states are southern, okay? Not to say anything about southern states, but they are predominantly in the South, all right? These southern state women have to go with this. This, again, for the 1000th time, is the reality of the situation, of the laws, of what they have to go through to get some justice with what happens with them, And it's like, the more and more I think about it, the more and more that I think that the law is more focused on women who lie.
Yes.
And when you sink into that thought, it's like, a lot of this shit makes sense, alright? A lot of this shit makes total sense. Alright, there's a bunch of women that lie about, like, abortion laws. I'm not gonna outright and say that they're the majority, but there's a lot, And so these laws are in place so that they don't lie. But it's like you're taking one's right when they are being abused, and you're also taking a right away from someone who is just tied in and innocent at this point. You know, and that's why I have no point, because it's kind of equal in both sides. It's like, well, yeah, well, women here, they don't get to lie, but at the same time, if they say something, it's not guaranteed that they're gonna get the justice that they deserve. You know, it sucks. It's disgusting. It's horrible. It's bad. It looks so bad on the U.S. And more, and I think it's like the U.S. would be so much better if they never even incorporated those laws, no matter how you feel about it, because it makes a split. We're the country that strives on the fact that, you know, united we stand, divided we fall, and yet one situation or another, it's like it splits us apart. Abortion has been like the most talked about topic, but it's not definitely the only topic. But I won't go into it too much. But you know, like gun laws and such like that, it splits like this kind of topic splits the country apart, and it makes the law enforcement so bad.
But just because it does that, though, does that mean we shouldn't have those discussions?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I feel like we should have those discussions. I feel like the discussion should be made, but I shouldn't feel like it shouldn't be so harsh. It shouldn't be so rash. It shouldn't be so quick. Like, some of these laws are going to go into effect as early as next month. So women who are probably already pregnant, never mind the women that are getting abused in this point in time, because it happens every day. Okay, let's be real. Shit happens every day, and I'm not brushing it off, but it's making light to the situation that anything can happen at any point in time, whether you leave your house or not. Anything can happen. It's all situations. We all however many people that's in the U.S., we all we all deal with different situations, and that's what the law enforcement has to understand. And that's what that's what I don't like. I don't feel like they understand people's situations, especially coming from a woman's standpoint. Going back to Alabama, because that's just like, we can all three agree that's just like the worst perpetrator. But a woman who looks at this law and says that the only way you're getting out of abortion is if you're about to die from it, no, no. I mean, me personally, I don't feel like I have to say words on how bad that is, but there's too many situations with laws that are more lenient that makes Alabama even worse. But I'm gonna let 507 talk because he has a point.
I mean, it's impossible to discuss, let alone make a law about something as controversial as this, because there's not ever going to be any common ground with something like this. There's not going to be any middle ground where everybody can be happy or okay with the situation, because we're talking about action versus inaction on this instance here. And you know,
and not to cut you off, but I'm going to
degrees.
step away from a second, but continue.
No problem. But you know, there's just varying degrees, you know, to that situation, and to get the entirety of America to agree on one side, or even the majority of America to agree on it, is simply impossible. And I'm not saying that I agree with the decision that's been made thus far, but I mean, it is a decision that has been made based on the people that we did elect and put into power, or the people who did vote, which was not a lot of people, unfortunately, because voter turnouts are always pretty small. But I mean, I hope that's kind of a wake-up call for the people who didn't vote and weren't and would be against something like this. But my point more of being like there there's more division now in the United States than there ever has been, really, except for, I mean, minus the Civil War, because that's when we were actually shooting people over it. But you know, at this moment, like where we're at right now, with so much division, like I understand the need to want to be united, but we just do not have that privilege of being united at the current moment, and we've got more people who are more politically aware and socially aware than ever, and everybody's got an opinion, their own idea about something, and it just makes it more difficult at the end of the day. But I mean, we've got to figure something out where we're doing what our government is supposed to be doing as a democracy, but also like understanding and recognizing people's human rights and constitutional rights, and it's hard to do all that at the exact same time. Like, for as much as we clown politicians, like they do have an extremely hard job of trying to match whatever is with their ideals, but kind of appease the people that put them into power in the first place. I'm just like, this was obviously a bad idea from my standpoint. This was obviously a bad idea, but with the way that Utah's have written their law here, this is something that I personally agree with. Like, if we had to have an abortion law, which again I wouldn't really have any say in, because I feel extremely uncomfortable telling a woman what they can and can't do with their body. If we had to have a law, like, this is the one that I would want, because I feel like this provides, in most cases, Bree, you pointed out an extremely good case of, women not having the symptoms of being pregnant. I would say in most cases you would be aware that you could potentially be pregnant, and I think most people understand that if you're having sex, you do run the risk of whatever you consider those consequences to be, whether if you're having a child, getting an STD, whatever. So that there should be potentially some sort of routine checking in that point in time. I'm not saying that you should have to go out and buy a pregnancy test every 30 days or something if you're sexually active. I'm not saying it, but that's something I think that would be a good idea just to potentially throw out there, so you're not that woman who's 9 months pregnant and your water breaks and you're like, what's going on? Which I know is a rare instance and doesn't really happen a lot, but it's happened before, so that's something that does need to be discussed. I don't think the law is ever going to cover every single aspect of any situation, whether if that's pregnancy and abortion, or if that's something completely an unrelated topic. But I think it has to cover the majority of things that actually occur in the United States, and I think if anybody, Utah's got it right.
I think, going off to the point that this country, this is my final point, by the way, before we move on, unless Supernova or 507 have anything to contradict what I say. But the point that U.S. has a democracy says a lot. Okay? And whatever you say about the law system, whether you feel like your votes are invalid or valid, it's like, we got to make a statement about this. If we feel that this shit is truly wrong, keep doing what you're doing. Keep protesting peacefully. Keep making picket signs to annoy the fact that other people who may disagree are just like spewing BS or whatever. Keep fighting on for what you believe in. is all what I'm saying. Because it is a democracy. We have to vote on these kind of situations. At the end, it's going to come to a vote. So if the majority says that we need to stop this, we need to revise it, or we need to cut it off completely, whatever. If we don't like the laws for what it is, and that's our basic standpoint, then the laws need to be cut off and revised until they're fair, or just cut it off completely. And I'm fine with either. The U.S. was fine without. The U.S. in itself was fine without any laws. Now, there were some BS incidents where, abortion was unfair to the mother or the father or the child, whatever stand case. But it's like, we need our vote to be made valid. In a law system like this, we can't have we can't have a law about some specific things. There should be a set grounds of what's morally right and morally wrong. You know what I mean? Well, not morally, but it's just like, you get what I mean. Like, we should be able to decide for ourselves like what's good and what's bad. We should be able to decide like, all right, well, abortion at this point, it's consensual. We knew the risk. We didn't use a condom. We didn't use birth control. We just should have the baby because that's not fair to the baby. We made a mistake, not the baby itself. But then there's instances where, malpractice is used and, situations like that aren't as cut and dry. People are forced, both sides. It doesn't matter, The woman may not want the child because of the reasons. It sucks. Abortion, I believe, is like one of the hardest topics to talk about at this time without getting too many people irritated or angry. But I mean, it's the most interesting that we talked about. It's the one that keeps going on, and there's new situations coming up every day. Even after this stream, there may be new laws in place for every state to have some kind of abortion laws that outlaws it in some sort of way. Even my state can be affected. 507 state is affected. That doesn't mean that you're necessarily safe either. It could come to you. It could be signed literally an hour after we post the stream. This is, again, for the 1,001 time, it's the reality. You know what I mean? This is what we're living with. But that's all I have to say. And if that's all that's said for Utah, let's head on, unless you guys have something else to say.
I think I'm all good to go there. How about you, Nova?
I think I'm good on that one.
Alright, so the next one coming up is Mississippi, I believe. And the law says that it prohibits abortions when a fetal heartbeat can be detected. We already discussed this. No need to beat the dead horse. The law makes exceptions if a pregnancy threatens a woman's life or one of her major bodily functions. That's different. It does not make exceptions for cases of rape or incest. That's already been explained. It also says that the physician who performs an abortion after a fetal heartbeat is found could have his or her state medical license revoked. Now, that's a little different from going straight to jail, but I will just say this. The physician that is getting punished, I mean, it's hard to say because technically after a certain point, the law makes it seem like you're supposed to know when the baby is alive and having a heartbeat or not. And it's like, if there's laws to say okay, well, a baby is alive at a certain point, which kind of technically there is in certain states. It's like they outright abortion immediately, so I would just believe that those states would just make it seem like, all right, well, the baby is pretty much alive at the point of conception, no matter how you think. This is just a neutral standpoint. This is what I'm getting
Right.
from what the other states. So, using that same logic, it's like, well, you're getting punished as a physician if you know that the pregnancy has gone on long too far or whatever. And it's like, why should a physician get punished for something that he does? This is his and her job, you know what I mean? They don't just come into this line of work saying that I love killing babies. Like, no one does. No one in their right mind does. Okay? They do it because they're a job. They might do it for their own personal reasons. They might do it because they feel like it's right or wrong or whatever. I don't know. Whatever they think, it's America, alright? We get jobs for different reasons, but mainly to get money for the house, alright? But why is it the physician's fault that they're just doing their job?
That's
No science.
That's honestly a good question.
Like, no science is like that accurate. There's gonna be some fallacy. There's gonna be some discrepancy. You're not gonna be 100% right all the time. Even when you think of cases like using a condom, there's a small percentage of a chance that, you know, the condom might bust and you have a baby. So in that regard, it's like, if that is something as strong as a condom, in my personal opinion, can be like, can have some fault, then what makes people think that science in itself, technology, doesn't have technical difficulties? Okay? Because we have technical difficulties with our phones and laptops and such, and TVs and anything that's technology. You know? We have to fix our stuff in our own way or get some help from technical assistance every day. And it makes it seem like abortion is like 100% correct all the time, which, I mean, I can't get behind unless that's like a proven science, alright? And I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay.
There's
So,
nothing that's like 100% true. But go ahead, Supernova.
Sorry, I've been doing some little research in the background.
Mhm.
So apparently there's a couple ways that you can tell how far a pregnancy is along. And apparently one of the ways is by ultrasound, which you can use that when you're a little bit further along, but it looks like if you're like less than 5 weeks, it's not exactly like far enough to do the ultrasound. Like they won't really find something on there. And it sounds like also they can do a blood test, and apparently if there is high HCG levels in your blood, that's the further you're further along, you know, throughout the pregnancy. But so far I'm not really getting anything like cut and dry. This is exactly how you determine exactly the day, you know, you got pregnant, and this is exactly how many weeks you got. You know,
Okay.
you're in.
I'm just gonna ask you this. If you don't know it, then you don't know. But can you explain HCG generals levels in general? Because I personally am ignorant to it on that standpoint. So yeah, if you don't know it, then it's fine. If you want to search it up real quick, we can wait. It's all good. But I mean, it still kind of
Okay.
confirms my point that like it's still a science, and not every
Right.
science is going to be like
It's
100%. But go
definitely
ahead.
not the answer that I'm getting so far. Okay, so okay, this seems like pretty good piece of information. It takes about 2 weeks for your HCG levels to be high enough to be detected in your urine using a home pregnancy set test. We'll get that English.
Okay. 2 weeks, you said?
So that's, yeah, it takes 2 weeks for your levels to be high enough to detect you're pregnant.
But when is it first detected?
Um,
I want to be as specific as possible so we can get like a guideline on when is it first detected. Like I'm not sure myself. So yeah.
okay. So it says low levels of CG may be detected in your blood around 8 to 11 days after conceptions. Their levels are at their highest at the end of the first trimester. They will gradually decline over the course of the rest of your pregnancy.
So if the HCG, you said, right, levels are
Mhm.
high enough at the end of the first trimester, which 3 months. Okay, that I mean, it's a little bit more lenient than what we've seen in the past states, but 3 months is a big step down from 4 to 5 months to figure out if it's okay to have an abortion, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I mean,
So
literally
it
speaking, it's a month difference from like what we've seen before, is what I'm
right.
saying.
It's got some general listings. It's like, okay, so non-pregnant women, their level like less than 10, and then borderline pregnancy result would be 10 to 25. A positive pregnancy test, you have to be more than 25. Like your levels have to be more than 25 to result in a positive test. Pregnant women around 4 weeks after the last menstrual period or LMP, average 1 week before missed period. It has to be like anywhere from 0 to 750.
Is
So
there
that's like
any? Sorry.
hmm, it's like a huge jump from like your
It's
levels are
also like,
low.
yeah, it's like twice the level of what you normally are, basically, to put it in
It's
short terms.
it's it's more than twice because if you're not pregnant, your level should be like less than 10 for that chemical in your bloodstream, and
So
then
borderline
if
like three
you're
times, pretty much.
more like five
Sorry to
times.
cut you off again. I'm really sorry. It's just that
No, you're fine.
it's just that like I want to prove this point that like again, science is not it's not the end all be all.
It's,
Okay, you can
it's
be
not.
wrong.
It's not exact.
It's not exact
No, it's
at
not
all.
exact.
It's a good basis to go off of. Okay, but I mean the same way that we find about this information about HCG levels and stuff like that with pregnant women, the same thing that these politicians can find about online and verify it within like an hour to a couple minutes, whatever, however long they need to take to verify the information. So they sat there and read through what, one or two articles that give pretty much the same exact information or relative information and decided on a law that may or may not be BS or may have problems or may not have problems. You know? It's
I
just
mean,
something to think about.
I don't know the entire process that they go through. I think
I don't either.
politicians can't look into every single bill that they're signing 100% unless they want to be well versed to be able to speak about that topic. But it's like if you're against abortion and somebody passes an abortion law across your desk for you to sign, you might ask at best like, what are the big points in this, and get those, and then just kind of like put it away. You're not. These politicians aren't reading the whole entire bill.
And there's
These
actually
governors
proof of
aren't.
that. I can't bring up exact proof, but there has been information that I've been fed through from history books. Take it how you leave it. If you want to disagree, again, the comments are there. I will read them all and explain it to a full extent on what I mean if I agree or disagree with you. But there has been proof that multiple presidents, and I just say presidents alone because I mean they're like pretty much the highest state in like government, as far as I'm concerned. Technically, but really it's the Congress that kind of leads the country. But they are the end all do all. And if they read through this and they pass it, then any other law that gets added on, which a bunch of people can add on to kind of shift the way of leading to what they want to be law against what they don't want to be law, to be exact. There's been cases of that. There's been some cases. I'm not saying it happens a lot or not a lot, but the fact that there's been laws that have been added on to laws that the presidents and governments and governors want to have, it's kind of bad. Okay, because then you have to think about the different governors and presidents that don't want these laws that they don't agree with, like maybe these abortion laws. Maybe Ivy from Alabama, maybe she doesn't exactly agree with the abortion law to completely outright outlaw it, with the exception of the fact that the woman's life is at stake. But there could be laws that are added on to the fact in written paper that she has to sign for this law to go into effect. Like, I don't know, it could really be anything at this point. I can't really give a description, but like making rape like a lower punishment for a lot of states, or in that particular state like Alabama. I don't know what law has passed with the fact that that is almost completely outlawed in Alabama, but I want to believe that it's not the only law that's passed on that day, is what I'm saying. There's probably some underground stuff that's happening, but I can't say that with full confidence until I see what's actually passed on that day. So, you guys can argue as much as you want, but that's my standpoint on it.
Okay. Alright, let's see that. I think we can, what state are we even on now? Are we going to Kentucky or are we going to Mississippi?
We're going to Kentucky. The last one we were on, Mississippi.
Yeah.
And, I guess since we're pretty much done with Kentucky, because this is all general, so I'll just go to Mississippi to keep on. Or no, Kentucky, my bad. To keep on, right?
Kentucky. Because there's a point in that needs to be addressed.
Yes, and I can fully see it, but I'm going to read it out fully. For Kentucky, the law says that it prohibits abortion when a fetal heartbeat can be detected. Pretty much like a standpoint for most of these states. Another few state law bans their pregnancies because of fetus gender, race, or disability. So, I mean, there might be quite a few things that we have to unpack just from that last sentence alone. Gender, race, disability. How are you guys feeling about that?
Go.
I mean, if I want to start off, I personally believe that gender and race does not matter for the baby.
Yeah, I'm guessing my question is, what the hell is going on in Kentucky?
Yeah.
That gender, race, or disability had to be.
Yeah, like
it's extremely specific.
I don't want X kind of baby, but I will have X kind of man or woman to make up half the baby. Like, that's ridiculous. I
got pregnant, but my baby's Asian, so gotta go,
no.
Chief. Like, what?
Yeah, like, no, that's to me, I think that should be excluded completely, because there should be no reason why you're like, you have sex with a person, okay, gender, race, whatever, so it's a chance that can be either or, male or female, and they can be whatever between the two races or multiple races that you are, like black, white, yellow, black, green, blue, purple, you know? Why should that matter in terms of abortion? That's kind of ridiculous to me. But Supernova, your thoughts? Sorry.
So I'm definitely on the exact same page as you guys about the other two parts of that statement, but also I am definitely in favor. No, I am not in favor of the disability part because I brought this up earlier before we started streaming. But in that case, it's you can have a situation where you and your partner, you're intimate with each other because you've committed to each other and whatnot, but also, you recognize that you each have certain health things that are concerns that you don't want to pass on to a later generation. So say something happens, condom breaks, birth control was skipped, whatever, la 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 la, and you end up becoming pregnant. Now, do you force this couple to raise a child that they can't possibly take care of, they weren't prepared for, and they didn't even want to go down the path of, taking care of a child that could possibly take on one of the illnesses that they had or their parents had, or it's in their family and they know it's possible? How's it fair to them? Especially if it wasn't something they planned to begin with. So I really don't agree with that part. And
Right.
it almost comes down to a personal thing as well, because as far as me and my relationship goes, that's one of the things that me and my partner discuss is, one of the reasons why we decided that we are not having children is because we each have some things that are in our family lines that we don't want to pass on and have a child that could possibly suffer, the ways that we did or the ways that, a relative of ours did. I just
Right.
don't think it's fair.
Hmm.
And if we're so concerned about this infant's life, well, we really need to focus on the quality of this life that we are bringing into the world. I don't want to, have a child that's just going to suffer throughout its life, or, also you got to think about the mental aspect. Like, I have this child and it has a disability, and sometimes children don't make it past a certain age. Now I've lived this X amount of years with this child that has passed away. I had to bury it because it was born with a disability that I knew what it was going to get born with, and the fact that there's a possibility that it might not make it past a certain point, and I could not, because via my government, not bring this child into the world. It's just situations like that that just make it so morally wrong to include that. You know?
Yeah, I can definitely agree on that. It's just, I mean, oh man, there are so many points that we said before, and I really do not like repeating myself, but we go through different situations. It's just, and it's just like the fact that I keep saying this is just like, why hasn't the law have picked up on this, and talking to themselves about, like, did they really sit there and think this through, or did they just not like abortion outright because what's happened in recent times that they just needed to make a law about it? And then kind of like pull back in later times, because it has happened. I mean, first thing that comes to mind to me as a black man is slavery and segregation, how far back that shit was pulled. So they probably will do the same thing with abortion, but it's like we're dealing with the now at the same time too. Why was this a law? Why is abortion a law when there's so many things that counter against it in different states that have different laws that just makes it unacceptable either way, that makes it like better off if we didn't have like a specific law for abortion like this.
Hmm.
Now, I
It's just
mean,
really when you get in the specifics that this is where the problems arise, and it's something
yeah,
so simple.
but this is a government. They deal with the specifics. So It makes us
This is
believe
true.
that they dealt with the specifics and just didn't care about our
Right.
well-being, about our different situations, about how we were carried out and how we got to this situation where it's like we can potentially have a baby, we can potentially die, we have to carry a rapist's child. They didn't think about, like, it makes us think that they didn't think about this stuff. It makes us think like, all right, well, abortion is wrong no matter what, and screw you, you're gonna have this baby. That's what I feel about a lot of these different states, and that's why I can't get behind it. Like, regulation is one thing, okay, and that's a separate topic before we kind of wrap this up. But it's like there's so many flaws that it makes it so bad. And reading it out, it's like you can't really like disagree with the women that go against this. Like you have a moral stand. Like okay, well, I don't like babies dead. Okay, cool. No one that I really know likes a baby dead. Do you two agree or
Right, right.
Supernova?
Right.
Okay, so we agree on that. Nobody in this group, I can say, wants a baby dead. But that's not the point. It's how the baby is brought about. Again, and again, and again, and again, and I'll keep saying it, and I'll scream into the heavens. Everyone has a different situation. You can't discount one situation because you don't like the idea of one thing. You have to be a democracy. You're slowly turning into a dictatorship with the more that you limit your people's free rights. Slowly. I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but it's like the more you take away our rights, the more you like don't condone our opinions, the more all this BS that's gonna happen. People are going to get mad. People are going to want to speak, and they can speak because it's a democracy. But if you don't listen, then that looks bad on you. It looks infinitely bad on you. That's why the government gets so much heat from when these laws are made till this time of date right now. They look so bad right now. It's horrible. It's horrific. It makes these politicians that may or may not have a heart just define them as a group that they don't care about our citizens. And I'm pretty sure there's at least one person that cares, let alone the many few that care about the decisions that are being made in the U.S. It sucks. I wish I can say something better that it sucks, but it's like, dude, like, and I'll say it again, like, women in these different states, especially Alabama, my heart is out to you. I wish full justice for this abortion law. I wish it's more regulated. I wish it's more fair for the women that are dealing with this in the different states, different southern states mainly. I I just wish that you guys had the justice that you deserve.
I think. I mean, again. It kind of comes down to whatever your core belief is on abortion, and I think as you continue out through life, unless you have like a radical change of heart, wherever you start off with your view of abortion, probably is not going to change for the entirety of your life. But the laws will be more restrictive, less restrictive, over time, and then it'll be in constant flux. I think that this is something that should always be in the decision of women in most cases, just because um, they're the ones carrying that child for 9 months. They're the ones who have to go through the operation. If they are getting that child aborted, they're the ones that have to bear most, if not all, of the physical and emotional turmoil associated with having the child or not having the child, regardless of the circumstance. I think that I think that should be women that make that decision. and
I mean,
women are
not the woman from Alabama, but I mean.
right, right. Well, I mean, you know
Such
what?
a different
Even
topic, but you know.
even hurt in a weird sense that it should be all the women being able to have whatever that shared voice is. I mean, don't get me wrong, I disagree with the governor from Alabama, but you know, her opinion is just as terrible as it is it has
Nah, fuck
just as
that
much
bitch.
weight has just as much weight as anyone else's. But you know, does she speak for the entirety of all the women in her state at this moment in time? Not
No.
that any governor does, but yeah, I think the answer is no, and she definitely doesn't speak for anyone else.
No.
I think the majority of women in this country about their the
I already
restrictions
told you, we
and
threw
laws
her
about
away.
abortion.
She's not part
Yeah.
of us.
There's a difference between speaking for the majority and speaking for everyone. And that's what people get mixed around about. But Supernova, if you have any final thoughts before we move on to our last point, which is Arkansas or Arkansas.
Arkansas. Nah, it's definitely Arkansas.
Whatever. It's Arkansas people. We're not illiterate, even though English does make sense sometimes. But yeah.
Bro.
Any final thoughts for Kentucky before we move on to Arkansas?
No,
I think
it's
that's
just
it.
same things that I've been saying over and over.
All
I
right.
do have one thing that I'm gonna bring up at the end once we've finished.
Oh
sliding
yeah,
through
we're
these-
yeah.
sliding
I'm-
through these things, all these states.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we all have our thoughts concluded at this point because this is literally the last one, Arkansas. But Arkansas, it prohibits the abortions 18 weeks into a woman's pregnancy. The law contains exceptions for cases of rape, incest, and medical emergencies. That's pretty broad, but it's good that it's broad rather than like limited, in my personal opinion. But in parentheses, it says the state already bans abortion after 20 weeks of pregnancy. So I'm going to speak first on like the 20 weeks first. Now, this is the only state that has already outlawed abortion to some extent in a state like this. Even though it's 20 weeks, even though there has like certain rules that you have to abide by so that you can have an abortion, 20 weeks though. What do we as a Black Light Tavern say about that as the 20 weeks? 20 weeks equal to what? 5 months in retrospect. So, you know,
I would love to see the fine print on that because that is worded to be very black and white. If 20 weeks is the cutoff in general, that might be a little harsh for someone reading that. You know, just that like if 20 weeks passes by, we don't care what happened.
yeah. So let's just assume that
you're outside of the law.
let's just assume that the 20 weeks is in general because it doesn't elaborate. So we'll think of like the worst possible situation because that's what potentially could happen. So yes, the 20 weeks potentially is like, all right, we don't care what happens. You're gonna have the baby. You're gonna have the baby if it's after 20 weeks. Fair enough.
Again, this is the same instance with this girl up here. I forget which state that was at. I think that was Utah that had the
18 weeks.
The 18 weeks. So it's like I feel like that is, you know, going into 20 weeks that's a solid amount of time. I mean, and that's an older law as well, that they already banned abortion after 20 weeks of pregnancy. So that's not even with the new wave of stuff going on. Arkansas has just been like that for at least a year. I'm not sure how recent that law is, but I didn't really hear anything about Arkansas in the news in the past couple of years about abortion law. So I'm assuming that is has been set in stone for quite some time. But obviously that applies to the entire topic, and I think that's a decent amount of time. We could bring up what we've discussed before about the symptoms and whatnot. But I think in the cases that we care about a lot, which are the rape and incest cases, in which pregnancy could come about in those instances, it seems like that's enough leeway time to be able to show if you are pregnant, and to be able to take some time to figure out what type of action you wanted to do regarding that. But at the exact same time, on a personal level, I'm extremely uncomfortable with having this language being very, very strict and saying that, okay, the time is up, you can't do this, and we're telling you what you can't do with your body.
Yeah, dude. Like, before we get to Supernova, I just want to make a quick point that like the more and more I read into this, it's like I don't want to get into this situation to separate women that like have been abused in a certain way, where like their laws are limited because you know of a cutoff date. They have situations. They have many, 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 many different situations that can happen. Like I said, 7 billion people on Earth, roughly more, but you get the gist. That's a lot of damn situations to deal with. Whether you're living in the U.S. or you're coming into the U.S. for a vacation, whatever, it's like, damn, dude, like, if you go into the wrong state, you're kind of messed up. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you. Like Alabama dudes, like if you have a baby at that point, you're good. Like you're as good as having a new person in your family, or going to jail. Like pick your poison.
Basically.
Like
Basically, I mean, that or you gotta leave the United States and hope that the state of Alabama never catches you. Sheesh.
dude, I mean, we don't let's just assume that every like building reports to the state like what abortions were made. You're not safe. We can't just rely on a person making like a small discrepancy for your sake. We got to deal with the facts, you know? If this state says, well, law says that if you're fined of if you're fined of an abortion, you got to deal with at least 10 years. Then these abortion laws are probably going to be more than likely reported. I mean, we've the people in Alabama have voted over the fact that abortion should be outlawed for every fact except the fact that the woman should not die for the baby. So you can easily argue that like the same amount of people would argue that this person should go to jail because they were trying to have an abortion, regardless of what happened. So I don't know.
Which is why, like, I just don't understand, like, why we're criminalizing abortion. Which is, that's a whole different debate in itself. But like, when you criminalize something, like, people feel personally attacked in that instance. Like, I don't necessarily see abortion as a criminal act. I see it as a moral act at the end of the day, because I mean, like, that is something that you have to live with forever, regardless of what the circumstance was. But ultimately you get to make that decision. I think you should have that choice to make that decision within an ample amount of time, within a reasonable amount of time. But reasonable varies from case to case, and from state to state, obviously, in this situation.
Yeah. But Supernova, you've been a little bit quiet on this, but I want to get into your side because I know you definitely have something that you want to say about this.
Well, uh, to say how I feel about all of this, all of these states and how they have approached the abortion system, I also want to bring up something that kind of is adjacent to it,
Okay.
which is the fact of, you know, stopping it before it happens. We are very limited in how we can go about not having these pregnancies at all, apart from abstaining. That's the only 100% foolproof of not having a pregnancy.
Right.
But then you also have the option to, have sex, and
Excuse
you
me.
have partners that you're committed to, and sometimes that's just
Excuse
not
me.
in the books for you. But you also have these facilities, like, you have these governments that place these laws, like, oh, you can't have abortion at all, ever, at no point in time, at all. But then you also go to your physician and you can say, hey, I know the laws that are in my state, and I don't want to have any children whatsoever, but I also want to live my life freely to do what I do. I want to sterilize myself, and the doctor has the right to look at you, look at how old you are, and look at how many kids you have or don't have, and completely deny you of having this procedure.
To the procedure of never having, basically having not another kid again, right?
Right.
Yeah. Easily can just disagree with that. It's like, especially since you already brought up the fact that like men and women at a certain age will probably have a certain amount of kids. It's like if they want to guarantee that they don't want to have kids but still have their I mean, honestly, we can go back to before they even have kids. If they want to deny the fact that they don't want to have kids at all, they want to go into 20 years in life and say, I want to freely have relations with men or women, have sex or whatever, and not run the risk of having a baby, then they should be allowed to have that right. And the fact that doctors can deny you is kind of that. No, I don't exactly agree with that. You know what I mean? Because at that
Mhm.
point, you can fully say that that's the woman's body, that's their choice. Because technically, like the child isn't formed yet. You need a sperm and an egg to form a child. And if they're doing that way before the fact, if they're saying, "Hey, I want a vasectomy," or like whatever the equal term is for women.
Hysterectomy, I think. Maybe it's
Right.
a hysterectomy.
Right. Like if the same as the if the equal for whatever it is for the women, it's like the fact that you're denying that right is like for women in their case it's kind of like why? Why should men give that right to not have a potential baby, but women are forced to like live with that fact that they may have a baby, depending on what their partners is and if they're forced or not. That's really iffy to me, and that's what I want to make light of. Like again, these
Mhm.
governments are not thinking. They're not thinking as a whole. They're just kind of making rash decisions, and it's understandable, but at the same time we are the people and we deal with the repercussions. Okay, we deal with what they give us. If they give us guns, we shoot people. Okay, if they give us food, we eat. If they give us water, clean water, we drink. They give us these
But
laws. All right, they give us what we need to survive, and we have to make do with what we got. You know what I mean? And Nova is disconnected, but hopefully she will return. But I will continue my point in that
Mhm.
we need to think more carefully on all sides of the equation. We can't just think about the what plus what. We need to think about what it equals. What we need to think about is the outcome. What we need to think about is how we're going to go about life. how are we going to live with this? How are we going to live with our decision? How are we going to live with the fact that we were kind of forced, or we may not be forced, with the decision of keeping a baby or not? We need to think about this. If we don't have a choice, we're going to feel limited. That's just case in point. And we need more choices in this abortion fact, because all these laws, I mean, they're iffy. They're iffy in some regards. Some are more lenient than others. But the fact that this law came about, it's so controversial that women outright just speak about it. They speak about everything about the law. They speak about what the law is about, what affects them, if they've been raped, if they've not been raped, if they've known people who've been raped, family, friends, all of that nature, and like the injustice that they have to deal with after repercussions in their own state. It's so dumb. It's so dumb that a woman, okay, let me explain this, right? A woman in the worst state can be dealt with 10 years minimum if they're found that they had an abortion in a certain state, which is Alabama, because that's pretty much the strictest state. In Alabama, they can be fined for 10 years in the prison, all the way up into 99 or life, which is pretty much the same thing at this point. 99 years in prison because they were raped, because they didn't have a choice, because fuck it, you know, like they couldn't get away from the situation. That's harsh. That's just cruel. That's cruel for that one state alone. And there's a lot of different states that follow that same petition. It may not be the exact same thing, but they give a time limit for women when, you know, we deal with a lot of different situations, guys. I don't know how to get past this point. It's pretty much my main point is that, you know, we deal with a lot of different situations and they're not gonna be the same. You know? It's different. Everything is different. We're all different. There's so many humans on this earth. Why in the world will we limit such a controversial thing? I don't know what the US and these different states are thinking, but hopefully it gets changed to where it's more fair, or just completely take it out. I mean, we didn't need abortion, honestly. We didn't need abortion laws. Abortion is okay, but the laws about it afterwards is just completely unnecessary. We were somewhat of an okay country without it, but now we're even more divided than we were beforehand. There's still different things like race and, you know, different politics and money and stuff like that. But, you know, like, why one more thing to make us more divided? We are a nation. We are supposed to stand united. We are the United States of America, for God's sakes. And in 2019, at June 3rd, at 1:54 a.m., we are like the most divided than we've ever been so far. Maybe. I can argue that, like, well, it's not even really arguable. There's like many different situations where we've been more divided, but it's like, at the state we are right now, we can't afford to have like an abortion law that makes us more separated than we are right now, is what I'm saying. It's so dumb. It's mostly inconsiderate. It doesn't give fair rights to the people that we promised that we would have fair rights. It doesn't cover all the topics. It doesn't do anything right for the majority of us that live in this nation, and it sucks, and it's so bad. 507, you want to go ahead?
No, it's just, I mean, I agree with that 100%, and as much as we need to make sure, because I mean, both sides of the fence need to be defended, as much as we need to make sure that we have laws in place to protect those who are that can't, that don't have a voice for themselves, that can't protect themselves. Ultimately what's been written has not been in favor for, I think, the majority of women in America. That that they're not in agreement of what we've got, and until we've got something on paper that works and that they're ready to actually sign into law, this is our politicians' jobs to go back to the drawing board and get that right. And we may just be at a point right now currently where having an abortion law is just absolutely out of the question. And that may be where we're going potentially. Would I say if I necessarily agree with that or not? You know, depends on the state, depends on the timing and whatnot in the instance, in case by case basis. But from a general standpoint, yeah, I agree that we've got to get on a better page than where we're at now.
Mr. Vernova, do you want to add to that point before I make my statement on this?
No, you can go ahead.
Excuse me. And it's like, oh boy, it's so bad. Like, I love the fact that we talked about this topic at first, but it's like, the more and more I'm thinking about it, the longer we go on with this podcast, it's just like, honestly, I feel like the US would be better off if we decide that abortion laws should be made. Okay, there's a law for literally anything that you do. I can't go out into the street of New York without spitting on the ground, and I could be potentially arrested for 2 weeks all the way into a year because spitting on the ground in New York is actually a misdemeanor. So, I mean, if I can get punished for that, then something more serious like abortion, probably there should be some more laws into it. But I mean, we gotta refine it that makes it fair. And until that we make it fair for a lot of these people, first of all, the law makes it so that you rather a guilty man go free than an innocent man be arrested in the United States. And it stands firmly on that with all of its laws, okay? And going off of that, I'd rather a woman lie about whether the conception was forced or was it consensual, rather than them be forced to have a baby that they don't want. And that's the comparison that I want to make. All right, because there's so many different situations where like a woman can be like forced into having a child in these different states, whether they're the states that we mentioned or not. They could be forced by their family members, peer pressure. Anything can happen. We are people. We deal with different situations. And that's what the law has to understand, is that we're not so cut and dry in that the one law makes all for this kind of situation. It's different for, it's like killing, like killing is kind of cut and dry. Don't kill. Cool. If you have to defend yourself, we'll allow that. That makes sense. Because if like you have to defend yourself and you defend your child, your family, whoever you care about, then okay, cool. Defend yourself. If you have to kill the person to make yourself feel safe, cool. Do that, but don't go to the extent of that. And that's what it should be like the abortion. Take the risk. Take the woman's, I'd rather take the woman's word for it that they were raped, regardless if they were lying or not, than to tell an innocent woman that they were not raped and they have to have a baby. That would make me sick to my stomach, feeling like, alright, well, this woman didn't give me enough information. Well, she's gonna have to have it. And then, if I go through with the abortion, then I have to realize, well, fuck me. I may be going to jail for this if I live in the wrong state. I can deal with 5 years, 10 years, 99 years, depending on what side I'm on. If I'm a doctor or the woman going into the abortion clinic, you know, that's, I mean, that's ridiculous, dude. Like, we gotta make it more lenient. If we're gonna stand for one thing, like, you know, we want to protect the innocent, okay? And maybe we don't have enough facts to prove that the guilty are guilty and they go off as innocent and they go do their regular things. That's bad. But it's not as bad as, like, you know, a scholar, a perfect being, you know, theoretical, never done anything wrong in their life, go through a law process and they're found guilty even though they never did anything wrong, you know, and they go to jail for multiple years in their life, knowing what the jail system does to their the people that are inmates in that systems. Like, some people are as worse as getting beaten by officers in these jail systems because they don't comply with what the jail system says. They don't get as much food as they want. Maybe they want to eat more or less. Maybe they have to sleep. Maybe they want to do laundry at a certain time. Your laws, when you're arrested, are limited. It doesn't matter what the law, the government says. When you're in that box, when you're in the behind bars with those people, you don't have rights. Okay? You're pretty much no better than a slave at that point. You do their dirty work, you eat at a certain time, you sleep up at a certain time, you wake up at a certain time, you have to wear specific clothes. That's no different from a damn slave to me, honestly. Like, let's be real. And if you can disagree with me on that, then tell me. But honestly, an inmate is no different from a slave. It's just that you're legally a slave at that point because you did something wrong. Whether that is substantial to what you did wrong or not. Like, you can go into jail as wrong as, like, selling drugs on a corner because that's the only way you can provide for your family. You're going there for like 2 or 3 years and you're a slave and getting beaten as a black man with dreads, and they pull you and they beat you up and they fucking not feed you and they tase you, and your paperwork gets denied over and over again, delayed by more years than what you're supposed to be getting out because someone doesn't like the color of your skin or whatever. Like, you don't have rights in jail.
So dial that back for me. In terms of kind of like your final statement here on the abortion thing. Yeah, is it more you're kind of going into like the rights itself in the system that's been created, or is that something deeper? I'm just trying to connect the points here because you went on there a little bit about, you know, the prison and the connection to slavery, the parallels.
Right, and I did get a little off topic. I'm sorry, but I do get a little bit emotional about this topic, but I hope you guys don't get on me on that.
No,
but
I understand. I just want to make sure I understand the connection from how you got to that point to where we're at now. Not that I don't agree with you or anything.
Right.
I just wanted to see.
What I'm saying is that these laws will make certain outcomes possible that is unfair to the perpetrator, quote unquote, that has to deal with these so-called criminal acts. All right, for abortion, for a baby that you didn't want, you may be beaten and not fed and not released at a certain time because you're in jail. You don't get rights. I mean, there's enough information to substand that, but if you disagree with me, then again, the comment section is a thing, so we can talk about it. I will reply to anything and everything. So it's like so it's like when you go into jail, from my standpoint, you don't have anything. You are a slave to the law at this point. You wear what they want you to wear. You do what they want you to do. You eat when they say you can eat. You sleep when they can sleep. When they say that you can sleep, and you have to deal with the repercussions of other people that may want to break the law, and they include you in it, like a fight breaking out, and regardless of what you do in that situation, your sentence is longer because of that other person. And that's so hard to think about. Women who are wrongfully accused, well, I mean, not so much wrongly, but like, they're so, like, the punishment is so great of amount that is almost too much for what you have to deal with in jail. And I don't want an innocent woman to go to jail because simply that their rapist, made a baby that they didn't want, and now on top of the fact that they have to carry that baby and live through 9 months. But if they get arrested, now they don't even see the child whether or not they want to, and now they have to deal with the legal system, and now they're dealing with a bunch of women in a space that they may or may not be used to, and they have to live in a different space, being told what to do when we're in a free country. That's so dumb to me. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy the amount of punishment that you take just for being a woman, And just for being a woman, you can have so much more punishment than being a man. And I'm not saying that, like, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, the facts are there, dude. Like, you can be convicted of rape and be as soon as out as, like, a couple weeks to a month. But if you're convicted of, like, an abortion, minimum is 10 years. Look at the difference. The facts are there. There's people who have been gotten out because, oh, well, little Chad, he didn't do anything wrong. He has a football career, and he's white, and he has a good haircut. Why should he go to prison when he's 17, even though he just messed up a girl's life? No. That's bad. No. You cannot cater to those people. If they have a sick mind at that age, then they're going to continue doing it. And they're going to keep doing it. And they're going to keep getting away with it. That's how humans survive. If we keep doing the things that we want to do, and we like it, and we don't get in trouble with it, chances are we're going to keep doing it again if we don't think that this shit is wrong.
We need to start criminalizing the actual criminals instead of criminalizing the people who, in the cases of rape and incest, are victims in that situation.
It's like, okay, I like the point that you said, criminalizing something that you did wrong, because a lot of times people don't get criminalized for the different shit that they do. Even police officers, they beat on random people in the street, and because they have a badge, they'll just go off scot-free with a 2-week vacation. You hear it a lot. You see it a lot. It's not something that's uncommon. It's just something that we see. It may not happen a lot. It may happen a lot. I don't fucking know. But the fact is that it happens, and that we need to go against it. We need to have laws that prevent injustice against the citizens. The citizens matter the most in this country. The citizens should come first before anybody else. The citizens are what makes the bulk of the country. Why is that so hard for government and police enforcement and any other enforcement in the country to realize? We make the bulk of the system. So why are we treated indifferently for the systems that we live in? That's so dumb. We vote for you guys to, we want different laws to happen. We trust you guys to make it fair for us Americans. And time again, throughout the years, all the way from as early as the 1800s up until now, slavery, segregation, like women's rights in general, it's like we get into the same situation that we don't feel like we have enough rights in a certain time period, and it doesn't make any sense why it keeps happening. Why do we keep coming to this stalemate in America? And I only speak for America because that's the country that I live in. Why do we keep coming into the stalemate that we feel like we don't have rights on a certain topic? Why should we not have rights on the things that we like? Why should we not have rights on the things that we like? I don't understand. We should have rights on everything. We should be able to decide everything from waking up to wiping our ass to what we eat, to going to fucking bed in the morning, to having a job, to being black or being white, because that's not really a fucking choice. It's depending on our parents. You know, we have a choice. We should have a choice. So why is it that women are giving less choices each and every day with this abortion laws is making me angry. It makes me upset.
I think to kind of put the final stamp on that, it really does matter about the political environment a lot. And as Trump has been elected, not to put all this on Trump, because unless his name was on it, you can't really blame him for it. But because of the environment that has been created, and that we are living in more of a right world in terms of political parties, this is the environment that Trump has created where shit like this can fly. I mean, Obama was president for the max amount of time, for 2 terms, 8 years. You really didn't see anything like this with Obama. I could say the exact same thing for Bush when he was president, for Clinton when he was president. So
which Bush?
I don't know if this is
because it's arguable for like both presidencies. You know, the father and the son.
For son.
Okay.
I'm talking specifically regarding abortion, not necessarily regarding controversial policies that they may or may have not passed. Because I mean, if that were the case, Obamacare is definitely a big one I could point out with Obama, but we're not going to get into that now.
Yeah.
Since we're getting to the end of it, my point is just that the climate has changed because of the person in power, and when that does change, the types of laws that come into effect that get passed also change.
Okay. So, Supernova, your final thoughts on Alabama? Go as long as you need, because I went on an entire rant. So, speak your mind. Say anything that you need to say.
Fuck them boys.
I feel like what I said kind of go along with like what she's thinking. So if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. But man, I'm passionate about the people. I don't favor a side. I want, all of us in America to feel like we have rights, because we live in America. If this is a democracy, we should be able to choose what we want and how we want it. We shouldn't be able to have government regulate what we want. I mean, I'm not saying that laws shouldn't be in place, because, there's just certain things where it's just completely wrong. One of the most criminal things I can think of is this killing. Comes off the top of my head. Killing is wrong. Taking a life, bad. You can argue that I'm a Christian man, whatever, but whatever, not having the chance to live is bad comparing to having the chance to live and living a shitty life, in my opinion, at certain points, because, having a shitty life in the beginning can only happen in the beginning. It can get better. There's always a chance. But if you take away that life from that person, you take away that chance. You take away their rights. You take away everything from them. You take away their function. You take away them being able to breathe, to talk to their family, their sisters, their brothers, mom, dad, cousins, aunts, uncles, dogs, cats, their fucking house, the water that they drink, if they want to talk to the water, okay, you give away their rights. Okay? That's not good at all. And so killing, I believe, is just completely wrong on all standpoints in what you believe. I don't care if we have too many humans on our on our Earth and planet, you know, we're gonna have just as much food to feed us and just as amount of water to drink and to filter. So if we're smart enough to do that, then we're smart enough to live on this planet, in my opinion. But going back to abortion, don't limit unfair laws onto women because you feel that something is more important than what these women are experiencing are right. Don't do that. They come from different walks of life. I don't know how else to explain it. I feel like I've been repeating myself for like the past 2 hours. 3 hours actually. But I mean, how can you argue that, dude? How?
I mean,
It's okay.
something new comes out each time when you explain it. So
Yeah, you know what? Okay, people are always gonna have a counter argument to, well, you know, the baby's life is more important, and I get that. I don't like abortion personally. I
More important.
don't like abortion at all. I will say that confidently.
I'm
I-
gonna go ahead and I'm gonna dead that in the water just for the sake of time because I think
It's just
that
like,
is-
and people make these
that is a topic
arguments,
for,
you know what I mean?
Different
But
time.
situations that will come up like that, and you get what I'm saying. It's like people will try to validate one's life for
Filibuster.
for you know,
I think.
say that again.
Sorry. Did that in the water. Hit
Okay.
that outro. Hit that outro.
I won't go in any further. We're gonna close this out.
It got to end sometime.
All right. I get what you mean. We're gonna close this out. I'm getting off a little bit on topic. I like to think that 507 and Supernova have joined me, the motherfucking manager, into this very heated, very controversial topic because I believe that the three of us, let alone the rest of you guys that are listening, have many different thoughts to say about it. If we got off topic in any way, feel free to comment. Feel free to, you know, come with us, say some constructive criticism about this podcast because this is our first, you know, let's give it up to our first. But, you know, we feel passionate about this. We care about you guys. We care about your entertainment. You know, like the black man's log says, we care about your entertainment. We care about what you watch. We want you to watch our streams and gameplay and such. We want you to laugh and grow with us. We want you to live. We want you to be happy. We care about you. We care about people, no matter what aspect of life you come through. If you are a living person, it doesn't matter. We care about you. We care about your well-being. We care about what rights you have. We care about the stuff that you drink, the food that you eat. We care about what time you want to wake up in the morning, what time you want to go to sleep, the job, anything. And so we want to help defend the people that don't have a voice have a voice. And that's why we come about with all these different sides of the topics, to not make it feel like one-sided, but we address all different sides of this aspect. You know what I'm saying? If you guys disagree, then disagree. But I feel like
Nope.
we
Agree,
touched
agree.
on like all different sides, and if there's any different side that I didn't touch on, whatever you feel like, please tell me. Again, I will read. I have ample time. I have a phone. You know what I'm saying? So just tell me. But if that's all, then we're gonna close it out, and we're gonna have our final thoughts from 507 and Supernova, and I will stop talking.
Oh man, I think I'm good to go here. I mean, we could. This is definitely something that we could talk about. Anybody could talk about forever in a day, and as more and more states kind of like make their decision on this, whether they choose to enact this or if it goes forward with some of these states. The more we'll have to discuss, as some states are more lenient than others on the law, but I think we all stated our opinions here pretty well. The point of the conversation is to more or less have the conversation, not necessarily to try and change each other's minds. Nova and I have been at some kind of opposite ends of the spectrum on this one, but rightfully so, and based on what we think. And I think myself as a man, that I'm definitely gonna have some viewpoints that are coming from in a biased standpoint of not being able to be in a woman's body and not going through the things that they'll go through ever in my lifetime. So there's a little
Same
bit
here.
of leeway I give to Nova with that, and
It's
just
a hard knock
re-
life
respect
for
to
us.
all women out there. So
Oh
to the
yeah.
ladies in Alabama especially, GG.
To be
Just what I
honest, all
thought.
of you guys that have been dealing
Trash.
with abortion, that has been personally injustice to what you've been dealing with, my heart's out to you guys. I really hope that you guys get it appealed and that justice is brought onto you within the state of U.S. Court of Law, and whatever you deal with, it gets appealed. I just wish for the hope. I wish for the best for the hope that is brought onto you guys and such. And Supernova.
Alright guys, here we're gonna always keep it real with you, try to keep it as, calm and peaceful as possible, stating opinions and, bringing other aspects to the table and whatnot. Trying to be as eye-opening as possible, because, everybody has different views on things, and, you might learn some things that you didn't know before, or be open to your eyes to something you never even thought about. So, that's it from the hostess with the mostest. Catch you on the
Alright.
flip side, folks.
Any final thoughts before I close out?
Nope, the 507 is out.
Alright. Well, that's it for the Blacklight Tavern. Your host, Full Buster, also known as the motherfucking manager, is closing out with the hostess with the mostest, Supernova,
Thanks,
and the black man with the log, 507. We're closing out. If you guys have any more questions, comments, concerns, leave it in the comments. I will personally leave a response with my own channel. And I hope to see you guys in the next podcast. And we had a lot of fun doing this, hopefully, if we're all in agreement. And yeah, we'll hope to see you guys in the next podcast. If it's too long, tell us about it, whatever. Leave your constructive criticism in the comments, and I will personally read. But yeah, that's it. We're out. We're done. We're cool. All right. And cue the outro.